Chapter 43-59. And that makes sense. Ling Yuanqing and the other two mountain opening stage masters nodded their heads. They felt that there was nothing wrong with Lin Yi's answer. Huang Xiaotao was a super genius with dual fire and wind spiritual roots. She was also a golden core stage master who had a perfect breakthrough. Her strength was far from that of an ordinary golden core stage master. When the two of them joined forces, they were able to defeat a peak early nascent soul stage master. Although it seemed unbelievable to others, it was actually reasonable when they thought about it carefully. Impossible! Chen Ketian hurriedly said. The first time you two joined forces. But the second time, not long ago, you crippled Old Kong alone. How do you explain this? It's very simple. He was previously injured by me and Junior Huang. His injuries have not healed yet. Lin Yi smiled calmly and shrugged his shoulders. And when I was in the Jinduan Sea, I accidentally obtained 2 golden cores. After consuming them, I leveled up. Moreover, it was unexpected. Is it strange that Old Kong was crippled by me? Everyone nodded their heads again. Because they knew Huang Xiaotao's heaven-defying talent, they also knew that Lin Yi's aptitude was mediocre. Therefore, they first thought that it was mainly because of Huang Xiaotao that he could injure a peak early nascent soul stage master like Old Kong. Ling Yi was just there to make up the numbers. Even the second time they fought alone, it was definitely because Huang Xiaotao's injuries were too severe. After all, with Huang Xiaotao's super aptitude, it was not strange for her to defeat an opponent of a higher level. Moreover, Ling Yi himself said that the second time they fought, it was unexpected. It meant that the opponent must have underestimated him. With so many prerequisites, it resulted in the so-called early golden core stage killing a peak early nascent soul stage master. After analyzing all of this, it could only be said that Ling Yi was lucky, but it did not mean that he was really that heaven-defying. What my senior brother said is true. I can testify to this. At this time, Huang Xiaotao took the opportunity to stand out. Although she wanted to be with Lin Yi, since Lin Yi did not want to join the Morning Star Academy, she naturally had to find a way to help him. Naturally, she had to find a way to help Lin Yi escape successfully. As a direct disciple who was highly valued, Huang Xiaotao's words were clearly more trustworthy than a random passerby like Qing Qitian. Not only did the divine nun of the East Sea trust her disciple completely, but Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei did not doubt her at all. Huang Xiaotao's words were basically the final conclusion to today's events. No! Impossible! Absolutely impossible! Originally, he was about to succeed, but in the end, everything was suddenly destroyed. Qing Qitian was simply furious. He angrily pointed at Huang Xiaotao and said, "With this little bitch's strength, how could she possibly injure Old Kong? Back then, when I wanted to capture her, she hid behind Ling Yi and trembled. She simply..." Before Qing Qitian had even finished speaking, the atmosphere suddenly dropped to a freezing point. Everyone subconsciously held their breaths. The divine nun of the East Sea's icy cold voice rang out. "Who are you calling a little bitch? Who do you want to capture?" "I..." Only then did Qing Qitian realize what he had just said. Immediately, cold sweat poured down from his head. He wanted to remedy the situation in a hurry, but it was already too late. The divine nun of the East Sea was a mighty figure of the mountain establishment realm, and she had always been very protective of her own. Why would she give an ant like him the chance to remedy the situation? Qing Qitian was unable to say anything at all. He had only managed to utter a single word when he felt an icy cold, powerful pressure sweep over, blanketing the surroundings. It was like a lofty mountain that suddenly pressed down on top of his head, causing him to be utterly unable to catch his breath. The surroundings fell deathly silent. All that was left was Qing Qitian's heavy breathing. The blood on his face surged, and his eyes exploded with viciousness. A while later, he suddenly vomited a great mouthful of blood and collapsed on the ground, dead. Wei Xiaodong immediately pissed his pants in fright when he saw Qing Qitian's miserable death. Before anyone had noticed him, he retreated to a corner in a hurry, afraid to make a sound. Qin Deli was also frightened out of his wits as he cursed inside. He was tempted to grab Wei Xiaodong and give him 14,000 slaps. What kind of fucking idiot teammate did he find? It's fine if you're looking to die, but now I'm stuck in a tight spot as well. What am I supposed to do? It was not just the two of them who felt guilty. Even Lin Yi felt rather frightened when he saw this. Giants of the mountain establishment realm really were godlike existences. In the past, he had heard from that ghost that some powerful existences did not even need to do anything. They could kill you with a single glance. Lin Yi had thought that was a little exaggerated, but the sight before him had truly verified it. No matter how useless this Chinketian was, he was still a genuine late-stage golden elixir realm expert. He didn't even move a finger, yet he was casually tortured to death. The strength of an opening mountain stage giant was indeed beyond imagination. Out of everyone present, only Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei remained unmoved. They did not care at all. An ant-like existence actually dared to call the direct disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea a little bitch. Wasn't that just looking to die? The divine nun of the East Sea had always advocated purity, but her personal style was actually the classic example of using violence to curb violence. She was rather like the furious Buddha, especially when it involved her treasured disciple. Let alone killing a single person, it would already be very merciful if she did not destroy your entire family. Thank you for standing up for me, Master. Huang Xiaotao grabbed the divine nun of the East Sea's arm gratefully under Wang Xinyan's gesture. Xiaotao, remember this. No matter who it is that dares to harm you, feel free to tell me. I don't like killing people, but I don't mind killing people either. The divine nun of the East Sea patted Huang Xiaotao's hand gently before glancing at the corpse on the ground. She said indifferently, "Clean it up. Don't ruin everyone's mood." Yes, yes. Qi Wuhan was taken aback before nodding in a hurry. He got people to drag Chinketian's corpse out like a dead dog. At the same time, he secretly rejoiced inside. Chinketian had been his sworn enemy for many years. He had always been looking for trouble with him. However, Qi Wuhan had never dared to actually kill him because he was worried about the Poison Eye mercenaries. He never thought he would receive such a pleasant surprise today. Chinketian had died to the divine nun of the East Sea. Let alone avenging his son, his father, Cheng Haonan, would probably piss his pants in fright. He was afraid that she would destroy the entire Poison Eye mercenaries if she was displeased. The Poison Eye mercenaries had always been strutting around the verdant Arc Sea, but they only did whatever they wanted. Before a mountain establishment giant like the divine nun of the East Sea, resistance was nothing. Their life and death were completely up to her. Speak! What happened exactly? Ling Yuanqing turned to Qin Deli again. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 4360. Although this Lord Dean didn't have the intention to kill, Chinketian's mistake was placed in front of him, and Qin Deli was almost scared to the point of collapsing. He looked at Wei Xiaodong, who was hiding in the corner, and stammered. I heard this from shopkeeper Wei, so I came to report it to the Dean. Everyone's gaze landed on Wei Xiaodong. No matter how much Wei Xiaodong hid in the corner, he could only brace himself and stand out. I actually heard it from Chinketian, but he's already dead. I didn't think he was this kind of person. Wei Xiaodong explained with an embarrassed expression. In the end, you're blaming it all on a dead person? Ling Yuanqing couldn't help but feel somewhat annoyed. Qin Deli and Wei Xiaodong were immediately frightened when they heard this. If this big shot was as angry as the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, then the two of them would really have to accompany Chinketian. However, Ling Yuanqing was the dean of the Morning Star Academy after all, and he wasn't like the divine nun of the Eastern Sea who had her reverse scale touched. He wouldn't casually kill people, so he didn't plan on looking into this matter any further. There was no point. He knew Wei Xiaodong. Back when he was a vice shopkeeper in the Gaolan Sea of the Eastern Continent, he often went to the Morning Star Academy. Now that he was a shopkeeper in the Wei-Arc Sea, he was still a member of the Hong Merchant Group. Ling Yuanqing wouldn't go so far as to make a move on someone from the Hong Merchant Group over such a small matter. Since that's the case, let's go back. Ling Yuanqing finally spoke. At the side, Wei Hebei let out a regretful sigh. He had come full of hope, but in the end, he had returned empty-handed. The so-called super genius that could instantly kill someone of a higher realm, but in the end, he had made such a blunder. How could he endure this? However, regret was regret. The truth had already come to light. The three of them were great figures of the mountain opening stage, so they couldn't stay in the tiny Heaven's Equal escort agency for too long. Otherwise, they would be seen by outsiders who didn't know what kind of relationship the Morningstar Academy had with the Heaven's Equal escort agency. The group stood up immediately, but Sun Yan spoke up instead. Master, Xiao Tao is Master Ling Yi's junior, and we've worked together in the Equals escort agency before. It'd be a little unreasonable to let her go back with us like this. Why don't I stay with Xiao Tao and treat them to a meal? It'll be a final farewell. Alright, then when you go back tonight I'll tell you something. Be careful on the road. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded in agreement. She had always doted on her two disciples, so she obviously would not turn down such a reasonable request. Don't worry, Senior. Our escort agency will escort them back together, Lin Yi quickly said. That's right. Although our Equal Heaven escort agency is only a small escort agency, we still have some deterrence in a place like Velvet Arc City. We won't let anyone spoil the mood of the two young ladies. Qi Wuhan also guaranteed. And I'll have to trouble you then. The divine nun of the East Sea nodded before leaving with Ling Yuanqing and the others. Lin Yi and the others saw them off at the entrance. Only then did he turn around. Brother Ling, I was wondering why Escort Huang didn't return. I was worried that something might have happened to her and didn't dare to ask you about it. Who would have thought that he would be chosen by the Morningstar Academy to become the personal disciple of the godly nun of the Eastern Sea? Brother Ling, you're too mean, not even telling me about this kind of thing. Qi Wuhan pretended to grumble as he patted Lin Yi's shoulder. Hee. Brother Qi, you never asked me before, so I couldn't bring it up. Otherwise, people would think I was showing off, or even bragging. Lin Yi smiled. If it were anyone else, they would be eager to let the entire world know if their junior sister managed to climb up the social ladder and become the personal disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea. However, with his low-key personality, why would he do something like that? Not to mention that in terms of strength, potential, and heritage, Lin Yi was definitely a first-rate existence, and this was just him being humble. Other people would treat a major figure of the godly nun of the East Sea with reverence, but he would only look up to her at most. There would be a day when he would stand shoulder to shoulder with her, or even surpass her. As a result, he obviously did not believe that Huang Xiaotao was climbing up the social ladder by becoming her disciple. At most, he felt that the divine nun of the East Sea would not mistreat Huang Xiaotao. That's true. Escort Huang has never said anything before, so those who don't know really find it hard to believe. Qi Wuhan chuckled and said excitedly, This is a joyous occasion. We have to celebrate it properly. Today was a joyous day for him and the entire Heaven's Equal escort agency. The arrival of the three major figures of the godly sect was enough to make the Heaven's Equal escort agency famous across the entire South Continent, or even in the upcoming escort agency gathering. However, what made Qi Wuhan even happier was that Qin Ketian was dead, and he had died to the hands of the divine nun of the East Sea. He had endured this guy for a very long time, but he could not do anything about it. He never thought that he would be able to eliminate a great rival without any warning. Even the legendary pie falling from the sky could not compare to this. Moreover, Huang Xiaotao, who had always been missing, had actually become the personal disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea in the blink of an eye. This meant that as long as the Heaven's Equal escort agency maintained a good relationship with Ling Yi, they would also be able to rope in this super genius of the Morningstar Academy. He did not dare to say that he would be able to make the divine nun of the East Sea look at him in a different light, but even so, this was still an extremely enviable network. After all, a super genius that even the three major figures of the Morningstar Academy valued so much meant that he was destined to have a bright future ahead of him. Who knows, He might even be able to lean on a big tree and enjoy its shade. After listing all these good things, Chiwahan felt that he was simply blessed with good fortune. In the end, all of this was brought to him by Lin Yi. He immediately felt that he was really smart. Fortunately, he had taken a liking to Lin Yi at the docks back then, which was why he had so many good things coming his way today. Otherwise, not to mention so many good things, just the previous robbery incident alone would have kept him in the dark from the beginning to the end. Who knows, he might even be a fool now, being played around by that old fox Wei Xiaodong. Brother Ling, accompany the two ladies and chat for a while. I'll go arrange a banquet and treat you both to a good meal, Chiwahan said excitedly. After excusing himself to the two ladies, he personally led his men to arrange the banquet. Then let's go to my room for a while. Lin Yi smiled as he brought Sinyan and Huang Xiaotao to his room. After all, this was the best guest room in the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, and the decorations were quite elegant. There was a small living room in the room, just enough for the three of them to talk. As soon as they got back to the room, the two girls could no longer hold themselves back. One on the left, and the other on the right, they flew into Lin Yi's arms. The three of them hugged each other, and there was no physiological impulse that would make one blush. Instead, there was a faint but lingering sense of warmth, as if they were reuniting with family. To be continued. Chapter 4361. How have you two been recently? Lin Yi asked with a smile after the three of them hugged each other quietly for a long time. Yes, big sister Sinyan treats me better than a real sister. Master also loves me very much. No matter what happens, he dotes on us as if we were his own daughters. You saw it just now, Huang Xiaotao said with a blissful expression. She originally thought it would be very hard to be separated from Lin Yi, but both Wang Xinyan and the divine nun of the Eastern Sea made her feel like home. Even if she missed Lin Yi all the time, her days were not as difficult as she imagined. On the contrary, she was very happy these days. Since her parents died when she was a child, she was forced to stay with relatives. Everyone around her treated her like a commodity rather than a child. Even after they found out that she had a good aptitude for cultivation, she was just a rare commodity that could be hoarded. They never really cared about her. But now, not only did she have Lin Yi, she also had a gentle sister like Wang Xinyan, and a motherly master like the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Huang Xiaotao was a very contented person. She already felt very happy to have so many people care for her. She would not ask for more. Lin Yi glanced at Wang Xinyan gratefully. He was secretly glad that all his women were so nice. Otherwise, it would be a headache if one of them got jealous easily. Wang Xinyan naturally knew what Lin Yi was thinking. She rolled her eyes at him flirtatiously, but then she couldn't help but cover her mouth and laugh. She had always been kind to others. Moreover, Huang Xiaotao got along so well with her. She would naturally treat Huang Xiaotao well from the bottom of her heart. Perhaps Wang Xinyan herself didn't realize that she was so understanding and magnanimous. Instead, it would make Lin Yi like her more, value her more, and love her more. Let's not talk about the two of us. How are you? You seem to be in trouble again? Wang Xinyan asked with concern. Although she did not know what Wei Xiaodong and the others were planning, this incident seemed to be a conspiracy no matter how she looked at it. If Lin Yi had not handled it properly just now, it might have been a disaster. Fortunately, the result was not bad. Not only did they not succeed, he even brought the other party into the picture. It is indeed a little troublesome, but it is not a big problem. I can handle it, Lin Yi said with a smile. It was rare for him to reunite with the two girls, and he didn't want to say anything that would dampen the mood at such a good time. Moreover, with his own strength, he was indeed able to deal with it. Tell us. Are you going to tell us the good news and not the bad news in front of us? Then we'll do the same thing in the future. I won't tell you, no matter what trouble I'm in. Xinyan pursed her lips. Yes, I learned it from you, Huang Xiaotao added. I say, you two have only known each other for a few days, and you're already on the same side? Lin Yi didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He could only surrender and said, Well, there's nothing else anyway. I'll tell you about it. That's a good boy. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were finally satisfied. They hugged Lin Yi's arms and sat down, indicating for Lin Yi to speak quickly. This time, they suddenly recommended me to the big three of the academy. It is certain that Wei Xiaodong and Qin Ketian are behind it. I believe you can see this, Lin Yi said. It is not strange that Qin Ketian is behind it. We have a grudge with him before, but Wei Xiaodong is the manager of the Hong Chamber of Commerce's branch, and he is Hong Zhong's old friend. There is no enmity between them, so why would he want to deal with you? Huang Xiaotao asked curiously. It can't be said that there is no enmity between them. At least from his point of view, I spoiled his plans, so he bears a grudge. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Spoiled his plans? What plans? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were instantly even more curious. Xiaotao, do you remember when we were on a mission and were robbed by 4 pirates? I told you that there was something fishy about it. Actually, the fishy thing was that these pirates were hired by Wei Xiaodong himself. Lin Yi laughed coldly. He found someone to take back his own goods, and at the same time, he extorted a large sum of spirit jades from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. It was a total of 300,000 spirit jades. Compensate according to the price. Ah? This person is actually so black-hearted? Huang Xiaotao couldn't help but be speechless. She was different from Wang Xinyan. Because she knew that Wei Xiaodong was Hong Zhong's old friend, she had a preconceived impression that Wei Xiaodong was a good person. That is the truth. If I hadn't caught those 4 pirates by chance, I wouldn't have believed that Wei Xiaodong was actually such a person. You still don't know that the goods that he took back were life-saving goods for the Fang family on Rock Island. This is a life-saving item for the hundreds of people in the Fang clan village on Rock Island. Otherwise, they would not have been able to escape this time. Lin Yi sighed. What happened after that? After you caught the pirates and caught them red-handed, he couldn't deny it, could he? Wang Xinyan asked. Although we caught them red-handed, this old fox is cunning and stubborn. Even if we brought witnesses to confront him, he would insist that it was false. After all, he was the manager of a branch of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. We couldn't force him, so we couldn't do anything to him. Lin Yi shook his head. So you're saying that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was cheated of 300,000 spirit jades by him, but they could do nothing about it? Wang Xinyan asked in surprise. Everyone in the agency is helpless, but that is the truth. I can only say that people change. This time, even Hong Zhong was wrong about him. Lin Yi spread his hands and said, This Wei Xiaodong is really bad. He disregarded the lives of hundreds of people. Not only did he frame the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, but he also framed you this time. We can't let him go so easily. Even with Huang Xiaotao's gentle personality, she was filled with righteous indignation after hearing this. She turned to Wang Xinyan and said, Sister Xinyan, why don't we ask Master for help and punish him? She knew that Lin Yi was going to stay in the Weiark territorial waters for a while. If she didn't get rid of this threat, Wei Xiaodong, as soon as possible, she wouldn't be at ease leaving. Moreover, the Morning Star Academy had a high status. If the godly nun of the Eastern Sea personally intervened, no matter how cunning Wei Xiaodong was, he wouldn't dare to argue in front of a mountain opening period giant. Wang Xinyan was a little hesitant. After staying in the Morning Star Academy for more than a year, she knew more than Huang Xiaotao. She shook her head slightly and said, Sister Xiaotao, although the Academy has a high status, we can't ruin our relationship with the top Chamber of Commerce like the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Otherwise, we'll be in a passive position in the future. After all, we don't have any relations. Even a mountain opening period giant like our master can't casually punish someone from the Hong Chamber of Commerce. This is a big taboo. Didn't you see that Dean Ling was very angry just now, but he still let Wei Xiaodong go? Chapter 4362. Huang Xiaotao was simple-minded, but the sects did not interfere with each other. This was the most basic rule of the pugilistic world. She said awkwardly, Then what should we do? Are we just going to let Wei Xiaodong continue to roam freely? That's too infuriating. Huang Xinyan was also in a difficult position. She was the same as Huang Xiaotao. Of course, she wanted to help Lin Yi get rid of Wei Xiaodong before she left. But if she went to ask her master for help, it would put him in a difficult position. What should she do? You two are too stubborn. Who said that you have to ask your master to deal with Wei Xiaodong? Someone like Wei Xiaodong, is he worthy of a mountain opening stage powerhouse to deal with him personally? Lin Yi said with a smile as he looked at the awkward expressions of the two girls. But with just the three of us, are we going to force our way in? If we don't have a good reputation, it won't be so easy to break into the Hong Merchant Association. Wei Xiaodong is a sly old fox. Who knows, he might bite back at us, Huang Xinyan said worriedly. She knew that even if it was a branch, the Hong Merchant Association would definitely have a guest expert overseeing it. They couldn't just barge in. If they didn't have a good reputation, once things got out of hand, they would be attacked by Wei Xiaodong instead. That's not necessarily true. The Academy can't deal with Wei Xiaodong, but I can. Lin Yi smiled mysteriously. Ah? Huang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were stunned and looked at each other. Xiaotao, have you forgotten? I seem to have mentioned it to you before. I'm not an outsider in the Hong Merchant Association. I'm one of them. I'm their honorary vice president, Lin Yi said with a smile. That's right. Huang Xiaotao suddenly remembered. Because this was just a title, it was usually not used. If Lin Yi hadn't mentioned it, she wouldn't have remembered it. Honorary vice president? Huang Xinyan's eyes lit up. That's great. This position doesn't have any real power, but it's a good position. However, his status is there, and his authority to speak is unquestionable. Coupled with the evidence in his hands, it is perfect to deal with a branch manager like Wei Xiaodong. That's right. Wei Xiaodong is a man who has committed heinous crimes. I can't let him continue doing as he pleases. Even from the perspective of an honorary vice president, I have to do my part for the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yi made up his mind. If I want to deal with Wei Xiaodong, the first thing I'll have to do is take over the Arc branch from him. That's why I need the two of you to help me. How can I help? Huang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were raring to go. Neither of them liked to fight, but they couldn't wait to deal with Wei Xiaodong for Lin Yi. It's very simple. Come with me to deal with the guest expert there. If there is no accident, Wei Xiaodong himself is a nascent soul stage expert, and when the time comes, he will certainly not let himself be captured. They will definitely incite the other foreign dignitaries to deal with us. In order to prevent things from getting out of hand, we must end the battle as soon as possible. Lin Yi analyzed. Okay. Huang Xiaotao nodded happily without another word. She was already used to doing whatever Lin Yi said. Let alone controlling the Arc Rose branch, even if he burned it down, she would probably do it. She would probably do as he said. Okay, got it. Huang Xinyan thought for a while and nodded as well. She was more sensitive than Huang Xiaotao, so she naturally considered more things, such as the feasibility of doing this and the consequences it would bring to Lin Yi. Of course, Lin Yi's matters were her matters. She would definitely not just stand by and watch. However, she had to think clearly before taking action. So far, Lin Yi's method should be the most direct and effective. Huang Xiaotao had already told her before that their combined attack could easily kill a nascent soul cultivator. As for Huang Xinyan herself, she was an early nascent soul cultivator and a direct disciple of the divine nun of the East Sea that she had raised with great care. Killing a nascent soul cultivator was nothing difficult for her. According to common sense, the guest experts assigned to each branch by the Hong Chamber of Commerce were all at the original infant stage, but the number would not be too many. Even in a large branch like the North Island, there would only be 4. In a small branch like the Sea of Crescent Arc, there would only be 2 at most. Therefore, if there were no accidents, the success rate of quickly ending the battle was very high. Other than that, the Morning Star Academy was like a tiger and a wolf. No matter when or where, it would never be forbidden for the disciples to fight. On the contrary, all the rules and regulations tended to encourage the disciples to compete, and this so-called competition, in other words, was to cause trouble. Under the encouragement of such an atmosphere, the disciples of the Morning Star Academy caused a lot of trouble outside. As long as they did not poke a hole in the heavens, as long as they were able to take responsibility, the Academy would never blame them. Compared to the other disciples who would get restless if they did not do anything every day, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were definitely obedient. Causing trouble occasionally was in line with the temperament of the Academy. Moreover, even if the two of them took action, they had the protection of the towering divine nun of the Eastern Sea, so there would not be any problems. From a certain perspective, as long as the two of them took action with Lin Yi, it would be equivalent to pulling Lin Yi under the protection of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea as well. Even if something happened, they would not have to worry about it. Lin Yi had always been a man of action. After the three of them made up their minds, they only got the guards outside to inform Qi Wenhan. They did not say what they were going to do, and they directly rushed to the Hong Merchant Association. By now, it was already dark, and there were not many customers. The Hong Merchant Association was just about to close for the day, but in the end, Lin Yi directly rushed in with the two girls. "Sir, our shop has already closed for the day. Please come back early tomorrow." The employee hurriedly stopped them. "Come back early?" Lin Yi could not help but laugh when he heard that. He glanced at the employee and said playfully, "Do you think it's time to line up to cause trouble? It's none of your business. Hurry up and call Wei Xiaotong out. You won't be able to handle this today." "Cause trouble?" The employee was taken aback. He had been in the Hong Merchant Association for so many years, but he had never seen anyone who dared to cause trouble. Even the most notorious Poison Eye mercenaries did not dare to do so. However, sensing the auras of experts from Lin Yi and the other two, the employee immediately did not dare to say anything else. This was indeed not something he could handle. He ran into the inner hall in a hurry and called Wei Xiaotong out. Wei Xiaotong was originally drinking tea to calm himself down. What happened at the Equal Heaven Escort Agency had truly scared him silly. In particular, when Ling Yuanqing flew into a rage at the end, he, the manager of a branch of the Hong Merchant Association, had been so frightened that his legs had turned to jelly, and he had almost knelt down on the spot. Today, he had truly taken a trip to the gates of hell. Murloc Urin 22, welcome to Ad. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 4363. It's all that idiot Chinkatian's fault. He's hopelessly stupid. Not only did he seek his own death, he almost dragged me down with him. I must have been blind to work with such an idiot. Wei Xiaotong was still feeling gloomy and afraid when he saw the shop assistant running in with a panicked face, claiming that someone was here to cause trouble. "What are you guys doing?" Wei Xiaotong hurriedly followed the shop assistant out. After seeing Lin Yi and the others, he was stunned. "What are we doing?" Lin Yi looked at him, crossed his arms, and smiled. "That depends on how you interpret it. We're here to investigate you, shopkeeper Wei, for breaking the law. Of course, from your point of view, we're here to cause trouble. You're right, shopkeeper Wei. They were really F***ing wrecking the place." Wei Xiaotong's mouth twitched. He could ignore Lin Yi, but he did not dare to underestimate Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. These two were the direct disciples of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. If he offended them, it was equivalent to offending the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. That was not a joke. Chinkatian's tragic death was a living example. Therefore, even if the other party said that they were causing trouble, as long as the situation did not develop beyond control, Wei Xiaotong could only pretend that he did not hear it. "Investigating me for violating the law?" Wei Xiaotong pretended to be shocked. "Did I hear wrongly? Although your Morning Star Academy has a high status, there's no reason for you to interfere with the Hong Merchant Association's business. I'm afraid this is against the rules, right? Do the seniors in the academy know what you're doing? Moreover, what have I done to violate the law?" A series of rhetorical questions, coupled with Wei Xiaotong's shocked and innocent expression, could easily fool a normal person. However, Lin Yi and the others obviously did not care about him. You're right. The Morning Star Academy cannot interfere. They have no reason to interfere with you, but I can. As Lin Yi spoke, he suddenly took out a beautiful purple gold jade pendant. The words, Hong Merchant Association, could be vaguely seen in the center of the jade. The others did not understand, but Wei Xiaodong only took a look, and his expression changed. He was immediately stunned. This was an extremely rare purple gold jade. Even though it was just a small piece, it would fetch at least tens of thousands of spirit jades in an auction. Or even more. Wei Xiaodong had seen many good things, but the problem was that this purple gold jade pendant had a special meaning in the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In the Hong Consortium's Chamber of Commerce, as long as one was a high-ranking member of the vice president level, they would all have a jade pendant that could prove their identity. The president was Mo Jinyu. The vice president was Lan Jinyu, and this purple Jinyu represented the non-staff higher-ups who had made special contributions to the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In other words, he was the honorary vice president. Because these three types of golden jades were extremely rare, and the Hong Chamber of Commerce's unique array was specially set up inside, it was impossible for outsiders to imitate it. Therefore, as long as he took it out, no matter which branch he went to, it would be enough to prove his identity. However, the existence of the purple gold jade pendant in the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce could only be clearly told to those who had reached the level of a branch manager. As for ordinary guest experts or ordinary workers and manservants, they might not be able to see it in their entire lives due to their low level. Most of them knew nothing about this. What exactly do you want? Wei Xiaodong's eyelids twitched uncontrollably. He asked calmly as he quickly thought of a way to deal with it. He had acquaintances in the headquarters and knew that Hong Zhong had recently been promoted to vice president. At the same time, there was also an honorary vice president. However, he never expected that Lin Yi was actually this mysterious honorary vice president. Manager Wei seems to be someone who knows his stuff. You know what this purple gold jade pendant represents? Then I won't beat around the bush. As the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce, I announce that I am taking over this branch. Everyone, including Wei Xiaodong, will be investigated by me, Lin Yi announced loudly. There was an uproar in the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce. Everyone looked at each other. What was going on? Why did an honorary vice president suddenly appear and want to investigate the entire branch? Not only the staff. Even the two foreign chamberlains who were in charge of this place had shock in their eyes. They did not know about the purple gold jade pendant, but at least they knew that the honorary vice president was indeed someone who could take over the entire branch at a critical moment. Wei Xiaodong saw everyone's reaction and panicked. He knew that he had to react quickly. Otherwise, once everyone accepted this fact, he would never be able to turn the tables again. Men, arrest this fella who is pretending to be the honorary vice president! Wei Xiaodong made a prompt decision and shouted. This person is clearly called Ling Yi, a mere escort from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. How could he be the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Chamber of Commerce? The name on this jade pendant is clearly written as Lin Yi. This person is pretending to be a senior member of the headquarters. He must have ulterior motives. As soon as he said that, everyone looked at Lin Yi suspiciously. What kind of person was the honorary vice president? Why would he be a lowly escort at the Equals Escort Agency? Wei Xiaodong was right, this person was an impostor. One of them was the shopkeeper of his own branch, an absolute superior. The other was a lowly escort from the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, a nobody. To the people present, it was clear at a glance who they should trust. There was no need to hesitate at all. However, for the other ordinary staff, no matter who they believed, it would not affect the outcome. This was because they were weak and would never participate in battles. On the heavenly stage island, no matter what happened, the only thing that could truly decide the outcome was strength. Only the person with the biggest fist would be able to laugh at the end. Wei Xiaodong was well aware of this. Hence, his words were not directed at the others, but at the two original infant stage guest experts. With that, the two guest experts believed him as expected. They immediately unleashed their qi and stood to the left and right of Lin Yi's group, eyeing them covetously. Together with Wei Xiaodong, who was also an original infant stage expert, they had already surrounded Lin Yi's group. Once they began fighting later, they would have the advantage just by standing there. Ling Yi, even if you really can deal with original infant stage experts, there are 3 original infant stage experts here including me. Do you really think you can do anything to me? Wei Xiaodong sneered and refused to give up. I'd advise you to be a little more sensible and back off. I can pretend that nothing happened today. That way, not only will you lose your life, but you'll also drag down the 2 great disciples of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Chapter 4364. At the end of the day, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao's identities were a threshold that he could not cross. Unless he had no other choice, Wei Xiaodong really did not want to risk his life. Otherwise, if he accidentally injured the 2 of them, he would not be able to endure the wrath of the founding divine nun of the East Sea. Lin Yi ignored Wei Xiaodong and looked at the 2 guest experts. He said indifferently, "You too, other people may not know what's good, but can you not resist my purple gold jade pendant? Even if you haven't seen it with your own eyes, you must have heard of it. Wei Xiaodong is completely heartless and evil. If you continue to help him, you'll be the accomplice of the evildoer. You'll be guilty of the same crime. I advise you not to make a mistake." When he received the purple gold jade pendant from Hong Zhong, Lin Yi had heard Hong Zhong mention that in the Hong Clan Merchant Association, those who were not high enough would not know what the jade pendant represented. However, the guest experts were an exception. They had to go to the headquarters on Middle Island for inspection and training every once in a while. If they were not so inexperienced, they might know the origin of the jade pendant. After all, they were all members of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If there was no need, he didn't want to kill them all. However, the 2 guest experts turned a deaf ear to his words. There wasn't even a hint of hesitation on their faces. They just stared coldly at the 3 of them, as if they would attack without hesitation as long as Wei Xiaodong gave the order. "Ha ha ha ha, Ling Yi, don't waste your effort. You're just an escort from the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Who would believe you if you pretended to be the honorary vice president of the Hong Clan Merchant Association? Or do you always do things without using your brain?" Wei Xiaodong laughed mockingly. Of course, he knew that the purple gold jade pendant in Lin Yi's hand was real. Even the 2 guest experts already understood a little, but he was still fearless. The reason was simple. Although he had not completely controlled the entire branch in the years he had been in the Wayark territorial waters, he had at least bribed the 2 guest experts to become jackals of the same tribe. The guest experts did not have a subordinate relationship with the branch manager. However, their relationship was often very close. This phenomenon was common in the various branches of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. In the past few years, the 2 guest experts present had long become a community of interests with Wei Xiaodong. It could be said that they were in the same boat. After all, robbing someone halfway was risky. Those pirates were people who killed without batting an eyelid. Without an expert looking for them, it was very likely that they would be betrayed. Is that so? There was no other way. I originally only wanted to deal with Wei Xiaodong, but since the 2 of you insist on blocking the way, then don't blame me for being impolite. Lin Yi smiled indifferently. Humph, you still dare to talk big. Facing 3 original infant stage cultivators, do you even have a 5% chance of winning? Don't try to deceive yourselves. Since you came looking for trouble, even if I were to kill you, the Morning Star Academy wouldn't be able to say anything. Wei Xiaodong coldly snorted as he threatened. However, before he could finish his sentence, suddenly Lin Yi's eyes flashed. He didn't care about anything else and directly attacked. Wei Xiaodong knew that Lin Yi and the other 2 did not come with good intentions, but from just now until now, he wasn't too worried. After all, no matter how he looked at it, the 3 original infant stage cultivators on his side had the absolute upper hand in terms of strength. In his opinion, as long as Lin Yi was not completely stupid, he should be able to retreat in the face of difficulties and not invite humiliation. but he never expected. Regarding the evaluation of each other's strength, Lin Yi's side did not see it this way. The strength of the three original infant stage cultivators was indeed not to be underestimated. However, with Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, the two publicly recognized super geniuses of the Morning Star Academy, and the even more powerful Lin Yi, in front of these three people, everything else was just fleeting clouds. It could only be said that no matter how cunning Wei Xiaodong was, he was still just a mortal. In front of super geniuses like Lin Yi who were already used to killing those who were a higher level than him, any method of using a mortal's thinking to guess the situation was extremely stupid. From the beginning to the end, they were not on the same level at all. Frenzied 8 trigrams palm strike. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao attacked at the same time with great tacit understanding. 2 8 trigrams palms hit the guest expert on the left side at the same time. This person was a dignified original infant stage cultivator, but he made the same mistake as Wei Xiaodong. Not only did he misjudge the situation, but he even somewhat underestimated the enemy. So at this time, he was so stunned that he did not even have the chance to react. After being hit by the 2 palms, his eyes turned white on the spot. Amidst the screams of the servants, he flew out like a kite with a broken string and directly flew out of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. There was no movement for a long time, and it was unknown whether he was dead or alive. At the same time, on the other side, Wang Xinyan also attacked. The martial arts she used were neither fist nor palm techniques, nor leg techniques or weapons. The only movement was to put her hands together. The other people did not notice anything strange, but the guest expert on her right suddenly changed in expression. He felt a series of sounds of different heights suddenly ring out from all directions. It was like a series of mountains that stretched for hundreds of kilometers. Not only did it disturb his mind, but even more terrifyingly it seemed to be able to confuse the soul, causing the true qi in his meridians to stagnate. The guest expert immediately paled in fright. However, his first reaction was not to retreat, but to advance instead, charging straight at Wang Xinyan. Since this person was able to become a guest expert of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, he definitely had some skills. At the very least, his instinctive reaction at this moment was definitely worthy of praise. If he chose to turn around and escape at this moment, he would only expose more openings behind him, and he would only die faster. However, while the choice of advancing instead of retreating was not wrong, it was a pity that he had underestimated the strength of Wang Xinyan, the direct disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Unlike Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao, Wang Xinyan was a true early-stage nascent soul expert. With her extraordinary talent and the careful guidance of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea over the past year, it could only be said that the current Wang Xinyan was not in existence that regular nascent soul experts could contend with. The guest expert was already very fast, but before he could reach Wang Xinyan, the sounds coming from all directions became louder and louder, affecting his soul more and more. He suddenly raised his head and immediately gasped. Behind Wang Xinyan, a shadow that looked like black fog had appeared out of nowhere. The shadow pressed down like a mountain, and one could tell with a single glance that it was not an existence of the mortal world. It faintly gave off a transcendent aura, as if it was above everything in the mortal world. Before it, a mighty nascent soul expert felt like a lower creature in front of a higher creature. His body began to tremble instinctively, and he did not dare to take another step forward. Floating Astronomy. Chapter 4365. Wang Xinyan continued to put her palms together like a saintess. She did not move at all, but her lips moved slightly, and she slowly said, "Seal of mountains and seas." Immediately, the mountain-like phantom behind her suddenly rolled over out of thin air. At this moment, the genuine qi in the body of the guest minister was stagnant. Not to mention resisting, he couldn't even dodge. He was directly crushed to the ground by the phantom, leaving a pool of bright red blood and mud, and nothing else. Everyone was dead silent. They looked at Wang Xinyan as if they were looking at a monster. Although Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao had also instantly killed a guest expert, everyone could at least see how they did it. However, they did not see Wang Xinyan move at all. What kind of move was this? They only saw Wang Xinyan put her palms together, say 4 words softly, and the guest expert was directly turned into a pool of blood. Even a crafty person like Wei Xiaodong was frightened by such a shocking scene. Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao working together to instantly kill a guest expert was already shocking enough. He did not think that Wang Xinyan would be even more terrifying. From start to end, he could not even see how she did it. Thinking back to how the divine nun of the Eastern Sea had killed Xing Qitian with a single glance at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, and now that they were in a different place, Wang Xinyan's casual words had directly killed a guest expert. Wei Xiaodong could not help but wonder, were these master and disciple even human? Impressive! Lin Yi and Huang Xiaotao were also shocked by this scene and sighed inwardly. Good, I didn't embarrass master. Wang Xinyan stuck out her tongue cutely. This seal of mountains and seas was the divine nun of the Eastern Sea's signature martial technique, as well as the main martial techniques she had been cultivating for the past year. If she could not even deal with a mere nascent soul guest expert, then even the heavens would not tolerate it. The entire place was dead silent. Everyone looked at each other, and their gazes towards Lin Yi and the others were filled with respect. As for Wei Xiaodong, who had been brimming with confidence, this time, his mouth was agape, and he could not say anything for a long time. 3 original infant stage experts? Lin Yi smiled faintly and walked up to Wei Xiaodong as if there was no one else around. He patted Wei Xiaodong's shoulder and said, Now you're the only one left. Shopkeeper Wei, tell me, how should I deal with you? You guys. Faced with Lin Yi's mocking words, Lin Yi's eyes widened. Wei Xiaodong could only retreat. Even though he knew that the other party was only an expert in the intermediate stage of the Gold Core realm, he did not dare to make a move. After all, the strength that the 3 of them displayed in an instant was too terrifying. Taking advantage of the fact that the other party had let their guard down, and they were so close to each other, if they could seize the opportunity to capture Ling Yi, that would be the best solution. However, Wei Xiaodong did not lose his cool in the end. After all, he was not a fool. After the scene just now, he had clearly realized that these 3 people could not be judged by common sense. It seemed like a good opportunity, but if he acted rashly, there was a 99% chance that he would fail. He would die a horrible death. What about us? Things have already come to this. Could it be that Shopkeeper Wei still intends to resist stubbornly to the end? I don't think Shopkeeper Wei is that stupid, right? Lin Yi laughed coldly. In just one move, they had killed 2 foreign experts. Now, the 3 of them had completely shocked everyone in the Celestial Arc branch. At the same time, they had also completely controlled the situation. If he wanted to kill Wei Xiaodong, he could do it now. However, Lin Yi did not intend to do that. What he wanted was to smoothly take over the Celestial Arc branch. If he killed Wei Xiaodong in front of everyone, it would certainly vent his anger, but it would be difficult to deal with the aftermath. Not only would the people in the Celestial Arc branch be anxious, but it would also be difficult to explain to the headquarters of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. No matter what, Wei Xiaodong was a shopkeeper with real power. If they wanted to deal with him, they could only let the Hong Chamber of Commerce handle it themselves. Although Lin Yi was the honorary vice president, he could not just kill him on his own accord. That would turn a good thing into a bad thing. Wei Xiaodong was a shrewd person. He instantly noticed Lin Yi's concerns. He knew that the other party would not dare to kill him just like that. His originally bowed back immediately straightened up. Wow! As disciples of the Morning Star Academy, you actually dare to commit crimes with swindlers and swindlers. You dare to come to our Hong Chamber of Commerce to kill people. I will report this to the dean of your academy. Wei Xiaodong instantly jumped up and shouted. He knew that Ling Yi would definitely not be scared away. However, if he could scare Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao away, it would be much easier today. After all, putting aside their strength, the identity of the 2 women was what he was most afraid of. Wei Xiaodong took it for granted that the 2 women were young and impetuous. After hearing Lin Yi's slanderous words, they came to stand up for him. It was just like how students were afraid of being found out by their teachers when they did bad things. As long as he mentioned the dean of the academy, the two women might not dare to be so unbridled. Unexpectedly, the two women giggled when they heard that. Wang Xinyan raised her eyebrows slightly and smiled. Then go. You! Wei Xiaodong instantly exploded in anger. The other party's fearless attitude clearly showed that they had him under their control. Truly, a tiger that fell to the plains would be bullied by dogs. He was a shopkeeper of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, but he was actually being controlled by a few young juniors. Us? Shopkeeper Wei, you don't have to worry about our matters. You should be more concerned about your own fate, Lin Yi sneered. He then took a specially made black gold chain from the shelf and tied Wei Xiaodong firmly without saying a word. This was the equipment used by the Law Enforcement Hall of the Sea region to enforce the family rules. Tying it on the body would greatly affect the circulation of qi. Even an original infant stage expert would not be able to break free. It was something that he had obtained from the previous auctions. Its value was not very high, but in a situation like this, it just happened to come in handy. In the process of being tied up, although Wei Xiaodong was flustered and exasperated, he did not dare to resist at all. He was afraid that if he was not careful, he would follow in the footsteps of the two foreign experts and be killed by Lin Yi and the other two daring fellows. At this time, the other workers and manservants were completely dumbfounded. They were all trembling with fear and did not know what to do. From a psychological point of view, they naturally trusted their immediate superior, Wei Xiaodong, and would not trust an outsider like Lin Yi. However, the problem was that strength determined everything. At this moment, there were only 3 original infant stage experts here. The 2 foreign experts had already been sent flying, and it was unknown whether they were dead or alive. The remaining Wei Xiaodong was tied up. What could they do? Could it be that they would fight to the death with Lin Yi and the other 2? Don't look at how many people there were. If they really fought, even if they all attacked together, they would not even be enough to fill the gaps between the opponent's teeth. Chapter 4366. They couldn't beat him, and they couldn't escape either. The only thing they could do was to continue standing there, trembling with fear, and wait for Lin Yi's group to make their next move. Everyone listen up, I am now the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, temporarily taking over the Wei Arc branch, Lin Yi announced loudly. Lin Yi's gaze slowly swept across everyone's faces, and everyone who was swept by his gaze involuntarily lowered their heads, not daring to meet his gaze. They didn't know if he was really the honorary vice president, but at least they knew that everything was up to him. Where is the vice president? Lin Yi suddenly asked. No one answered, but everyone's gaze had already given the answer, and all of them were looking at a middle-aged man at the side. Lin Yi followed everyone's gaze, and saw that this middle-aged man had a docile expression. Rather than saying that he was honest, it was better to say that he had the temperament of a typical punching bag. With one look, one could tell that this fellow was definitely not a strong person. The middle-aged man originally had his neck shrunk, but seeing everyone looking at him, especially Lin Yi's group, he instantly panicked and hurriedly walked out. I am Honest Chai, the vice president of this branch. I pay my respects to the vice president. The middle-aged man stuttered as he carefully paid his respects. Even though he was the vice president, he relied purely on his experience to climb up, and did not have any connections among the higher-ups in the headquarters. Naturally, he didn't know anything about the purple gold jade pendant, and his attitude towards Lin Yi's group was the same as that of the other workers. However, Honest Chai was a cowardly person, and Lin Yi's group was not to be trifled with. Even someone as powerful as Wei Xiaodong was bullied to the point of losing his temper, so he naturally didn't dare to contradict them in public. Since Lin Yi said that he was the honorary vice president, then he would treat it as such. And were you involved in Wei Xiaodong's matters? Lin Yi sized up this person. Many people looked honest at first glance, but in actuality, they were just hiding their strength deeply. Since this person was the vice president under the old fox Wei Xiaodong, it was very possible that he couldn't be underestimated. Perhaps they were jackals of the same tribe. Reporting to Vice President. I'm purely idle, I don't know anything. Honest Chai was so scared that he peed his pants and quickly shook his head in denial. Completely unemployed? Linny frowned and couldn't help but ask doubtfully. Since you're a dignified vice manager, how could you be unemployed? In any branch of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, the deputy manager was the second most powerful person. Although he did not manage the overall situation like the manager, he still had a lot of power. Wei Xiaodong in the Gaolin Sea. He was a living example. If he didn't have enough power, he wouldn't be able to cooperate with Qin Deli to fill his pockets. How could a person in such an important position be idle? How could he not know anything? It's true, every word I say is the truth. I won't dare to lie. If I do, may the heavens punish me. Honest Chai hurriedly swore. If he was seen as Wei Xiaodong's accomplice by Lin Yi, he wouldn't even have a place to cry. His death would be even more unjust than Do Yi's. You don't have to be anxious. Whether it's true or not, I'll find someone to ask. Lin Yi said indifferently, then signaled Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao to keep a close eye on the tied-up Wei Xiaodong. He then casually called for an assistant. Lin Yi brought the assistant into the guest hall, leaving Honest Chai and the rest to wait anxiously outside. Just now, that deputy manager Chai said he was unemployed. Is that true? Lin Yi turned to look at the assistant and asked without batting an eyelid. It's true. The assistant was just a heaven-rank expert who hadn't even reached foundation establishment. In front of Lin Yi, he was no different from an ordinary person. Just a casual glance from Lin Yi caused his heart to palpitate. Oh? He's a deputy manager with real power. How is he unemployed? Why don't you tell me? Lin Yi asked suspiciously. It's true. This lowly one doesn't dare to lie. Deputy Manager Chai doesn't really do anything. Everything in our branch is managed by Manager Wei. Deputy Manager Chai rarely shows his face. The assistant was afraid that Lin Yi wouldn't believe him and was about to cry. Rarely shows his face? You're saying that this guy is usually lazy? Lin Yi continued to ask. No, it's not that. Manager Chai has never been lazy in the past. He has always been diligent. However, a few years ago, after Manager Wei was transferred here, he didn't really manage things. The assistant carefully replied. That means this Honest Chai was pushed aside by Wei Xiaodong? Between them, did they have any open conflicts? Lin Yi thoughtfully pinched his chin. The assistant thought carefully and said, if we're talking about open conflicts, it was a few years ago. When Manager Wei was just transferred here, he forcefully took over all the businesses that Deputy Manager Chai was in charge of. At that time, Deputy Manager Chai tried to reason with him. At that time, Manager Wei didn't say anything, nor did he get angry. However, Deputy Manager Chai disappeared for a month. He said that he went to the headquarters in Middle Island. Other than that, there were no other conflicts. Basically, no matter what Manager Wei said, Deputy Manager Chai didn't participate, nor did he express his opinion, disappeared for a month? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little strange. Seeing that the assistant wanted to say something, he said, Tell me everything you know. Don't force me to use the soul-searching technique. Yes. The assistant didn't know that Lin Yi didn't know any soul-searching technique and was just trying to scare him. He didn't dare to hide anything and quickly said, I heard that during that month, Deputy Manager Chai didn't actually go to the headquarters in Middle Island. Instead, he was injured by someone and had to rest for a whole month. Rest for a month? That means it was Wei Xiaodong's doing? The corner of Lin Yi's mouth curled up slightly. Deputy Manager Chai never mentioned it to anyone. We don't know either. But that's what everyone guessed. Otherwise, they wouldn't be so afraid of Manager Wei. They didn't dare to do anything and just made him a mere figurehead. The assistant said carefully, Yes, I understand. You can go out and ask Honest Chai to come in. Lin Yi nodded. He had been paying attention to the assistant's expression from beginning to end. He didn't find anything strange. In other words, what this person said should be true. Moreover, the things he revealed matched with Honest Chai's temperament and behavior just now. It was impossible to fabricate anything on the spot, so it had enough credibility. Yes, yes. Only then did the assistant let out a long breath. Chapter 4367. The shop assistant was drenched in sweat as if he had just walked through the gates of hell. It wasn't because he felt guilty, but because the invisible pressure from Lin Yi's body was too strong. As a shop assistant who didn't even have the strength of a foundation establishment stage, he couldn't withstand it. After a while, Honest Chai walked in quietly and stood in front of Lin Yi. He didn't even dare to breathe loudly as he lowered his head and whispered, "Vice Chairman, what instructions do you have for me? I heard that your relationship with Wei Xiaodong isn't that good?" Lin Yi glanced at him and smiled mysteriously. There was a small misunderstanding in the past," Honest Chai replied cautiously. He knew that Lin Yi must have heard this from the shop assistant just now. Moreover, it wasn't a bad thing to let the other party know about this. At least, he could clear himself of the suspicion of being in cahoots with Wei Xiaodong. However, Honest Chai didn't know what Lin Yi was planning to do with Wei Xiaodong. Thus, he didn't dare to be happy too early. Small misunderstanding? A vice shopkeeper was made a mere figurehead and even had to recuperate for a month. You call this a small misunderstanding? You're quite a magnanimous person. Lin Yi smiled and said, "Let me ask you, do you have any evidence of Wei Xiaodong's crimes?" He only asked this question after hearing the shop assistant's words. He originally wanted to find an honest person to help him manage the branch, but if he could use it to deal with Wei Xiaodong, then he would naturally be more than happy to do so. Evidence? Honest Chai was taken aback and his expression became hesitant. He didn't know what to do and said, Do you have it or not? Cut the crap. Lin Yi directly cut him off. Wei Xiaodong's matter had to be resolved as soon as possible. Otherwise, if this dragged on for too long, there might be some unexpected changes. Wei Xiaodong wasn't a fool. While he was doing bad things, he also wanted to ensure his safety. He would definitely drag a lot of people down with him. Among them might be the higher-ups of the Hong Chamber of Commerce's headquarters or other influential figures. By the time these people reacted and interfered, the pressure that Lin Yi would face would be as great as a mountain. If things really developed to that point, unless he let go, he would become enemies with a large group of people because of an insignificant Wei Xiaodong. With Lin Yi's personality, it was impossible for him to lower his head to these people. But he didn't want any unexpected twists and turns. Because in his plan, someone else would take over this matter, and he wouldn't be the one to carry it out to the end. Even if it was for the sake of the person who would take over, he had to cut the Gordian knot and control the impact to the minimum. Being stared at by Lin Yi at such a close distance, Honest Chai, who was already trembling in fear, became even more fearful. His back was already soaked in cold sweat. Back then, he had killed his way up from the mortal world. In the year after arriving at Heaven's Stage Island, he had encountered all sorts of fortuitous encounters and his strength had advanced by leaps and bounds. Even Lin Yi himself didn't realize that his aura was so much stronger than it used to be. Furthermore, although he looked calm normally, deep down in his bones, Lin Yi was an extremely powerful person, and his aura was equally oppressive. If it wasn't for the fact that he always kept a low profile, he wouldn't have been able to do anything. If he didn't keep a low profile, normal people wouldn't be able to stand in front of him. Even Golden Core experts of the same level would feel as though they were standing next to an overlord-level beast, trembling in fear as though they were walking on thin ice. Honest Chai had a deep understanding of this feeling. Although Wei Xiaodong had always been overbearing, he relied on all sorts of sinister methods to intimidate others. As for this Lin Yi in front of him, he only needed to stand there and look at you. He did not even need to do anything, and you would not be able to endure it. Honest Chai originally didn't want to reveal everything, but he really couldn't withstand Lin Yi's pressure. He could only grit his teeth and admit it. Otherwise, if he really didn't reveal it, he couldn't guarantee that this fiendish person in front of him wouldn't take care of him as well. Let me have a look. Lin Yi's eyes lit up. He was just trying to ask on a whim, but he didn't expect that he really had it. This was an unexpected surprise. Yes, please wait a moment. At this point, Honest Chai didn't have any more hesitation. Seeing Lin Yi nod his head, he immediately returned to his room to look for the evidence that he had secretly collected. No matter how honest or cowardly a person was, they would still have a temper. After being bullied by Wei Xiaodong for so many years, he was originally a vice shopkeeper of a branch, but now, he was just a mere figurehead. He was even beaten up to recuperate for an entire month. If Honest Chai could really swallow this humiliation, he would probably be able to become an immortal. Thus, all these years, Honest Chai didn't participate in anything, turning a blind eye to everything. Wherever Wei Xiaodong went, he would hide. However, he had always been secretly collecting evidence, waiting for an opportunity. It was a pity that Wei Xiaodong had people protecting him in the Middle Island headquarters, and he had never met any of the higher-ups, not to mention having a powerful backer. Even if he had a pile of evidence in his hands, he didn't dare to make a move. There was no other reason. If you don't kill a snake, you will be harmed instead. He, Honest Chai, would not be able to withstand Wei Xiaodong's counterattack. Even though he felt wronged, it was better to live than to die. A moment later, Honest Chai returned with an account book in his hands. This is the evidence? Lin Yi glanced at Honest Chai and casually flipped through the account book. He was instantly baffled, because the method of accounting was very unique, and could even be said to be messy. After all, different professions are worlds apart, and Lin Yi had never studied in this field before, so he couldn't see through it. Yes. Honest Chai carefully observed Lin Yi's expression. This evidence was the fruit of his many years of hard work, and it was a powerful weapon that could topple Wei Xiaodong. However, the prerequisite was that it must land in the hands of a powerful character. After all, the evidence was dead, while the person was alive. If it was an ordinary person, even if they had this evidence, it would be useless. This was because Wei Xiaodong could make use of his backer in the Middle Island headquarters to make this evidence into a false one. It was also because of this that Honest Chai didn't dare to take out the evidence. He was afraid that Ling Wen's capabilities were not enough, and he was even more afraid that this so-called honorary vice president was not real, and was just a liar. However, worrying was one thing, and Honest Chai was ultimately not a daring person. In front of Lin Yi's prestige, he had no choice but to speak the truth. Lin Yi flipped through the account book and looked at it again and again. He turned to Honest Chai and said, "Tell me, what is written in this account book? What is the evidence of Wei Xiaodong's crimes?" The customs of the Heaven Island followed the ancient customs, and the numbers used in this account book were not the Arabic numerals used in the secular world, but the most standardized methods of calculation. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4368. As an assassin, Lin Yi had studied many things before he started his career. Naturally, he was not an exception when it came to ancient Chinese numerals. The problem was, he could only recognize the meaning of these ancient numerals, but he was completely clueless about this unique method of accounting. "Vice President, this account book was secretly recorded by me all these years. All of Wei Xiaodong's shady dealings of selling at a high price and reporting at a low price are recorded in it," Honest Chai explained carefully. Recording this account book was the only thing he had done all these years. He had spent a lot of effort and time on it. If not for the fact that Wei Xiaodong had turned him into a mere figurehead, he would not have had the time to investigate Wei Xiaodong's shady dealings. After all, no matter how tyrannical Wei Xiaodong was, these shady dealings could not be seen in the light. If he did not put in a lot of effort, others would not be able to detect it, let alone record down the detailed data. This was the result of Honest Chai's many years of hard work and investigation. "Then why can't I see it?" Lin Yi could not help but be puzzled. From his point of view, the things recorded in the book were completely out of sync. There was no logical order to speak of. Was this really the evidence of Wei Xiaodong's crimes? This? Honest Chai hesitated for a moment before deciding to reveal everything. "Vice President, you might not know this, but I used the number 18 dislocation method." That's why outsiders would not be able to see any clues. I was forced to do this. If I did not use this method and this account book fell into Wei Xiaodong's hands, then everything would be over. Number 18 Dislocation Method? Even though he was still confused, Lin Yi had a feeling that it was amazing. Different professions were worlds apart. When he first heard this name, he would have thought it was an extremely powerful lost martial technique. That's right, the dislocation method is an extremely unique method of accounting. According to the order, there are a total of 36 different ways. This is a special accounting method created by the ancestors of the ancient merchant guild. Its purpose is to ensure secrecy and safety. If one does not know which method is used, even if this account book lands in someone else's hands, they would not be able to find any clues. Honest Chai explained in detail. I see. I didn't expect you to be such a bookkeeping expert. Lin Yi couldn't help but raise his opinion of Honest Chai. Although this guy looked timid and afraid of trouble, at least he was good at keeping accounts. He was indeed very skilled. This dislocation bookkeeping method sounded like an extremely complicated and profound knowledge. If there were no accidents, even the shopkeepers of many chambers of commerce might not be able to completely understand it. Vice Guild Leader is flattering me. I was forced to do this. Honest Chai smiled bitterly. This was a matter of life and death, especially when the opponent was the cunning Wei Xiaodong, no matter how cautious he was. However, if that's the case, won't you be the only one who can understand this account book? Even if it's given to the other higher-ups in the headquarters, they might not be able to understand it, right? Lin Yi was a little troubled. After all, this account book was to be taken out as evidence of a crime. If no one could understand it, then the credibility of this account book would decrease. Well, it will be difficult for all the higher-ups in the headquarters to understand it. However, as long as they were told that it was the number 18 dislocation bookkeeping method, many of them should be able to understand it, because many of them had worked their way up from branch shopkeepers. They are also experts in bookkeeping. Honest Chai deduced. That's good. Lin Yi nodded. As long as the professionals could understand it, then there wouldn't be a problem. He immediately ordered. Make a copy of this account book. I will write a letter to explain the matter, then send it out together. Send it out? To the headquarters in the Middle Island? Honest Chai's spirit was roused, but he was still a little worried. I heard that Wei Xiaodong has a backer in the headquarters of Central Island. Unless you personally take a trip with the evidence, I'm afraid that just a letter and this account book won't have any effect. You don't have to worry about this. I don't intend to send it directly to the Middle Island, but to the North Island branch. Vice Guild Leader Hong Zhong is there, and he's an old friend of mine. He won't skimp on this matter. Lin Yi smiled. As the Vice Guild Leader, Hong Zhong was previously ostracized by the people in the Middle Island headquarters. This incident was a perfect opportunity. As long as he started an investigation with the evidence in the name of the Vice Guild Leader, no one could stop him from returning to the Middle Island. Especially Wei Xiaodong's backers. With Hong Zhong holding the handle in his hands, they wouldn't dare to openly oppose him, or else they would be in trouble. Vice Guild Leader Hong? That's great. I will go and make a copy of the account book now. Honest Chai was overjoyed. Different from the honorary Vice Guild Leader in front of him, Hong Zhong was the Vice Guild Leader with actual power. If he wanted to punish Wei Xiaodong, the branch shopkeeper, the honorary Vice Guild Leader would be suspected of exceeding his authority, but the Vice Guild Leader with actual power could make anyone unable to find fault with him. Moreover, Hong Zhong was the newly promoted Vice Guild Leader and had always been operating in the North Island branch. He didn't have any interactions with Wei Xiaodong, so there was naturally no need to worry that he would shield Wei Xiaodong. After a while, Honest Chai passed the copy of the account book to Lin Yi, and Lin Yi had already written a letter to Hong Zhong. He immediately used the Hong Chamber of Commerce's internal channels to send it to the North Island branch as fast as possible. After doing all this, what Lin Yi had to do next was very simple. While taking over the Yark branch, he had to keep a close eye on Wei Xiaodong. The rest was to wait patiently for Hong Zhong's response. However, although these things look simple, they weren't easy to do. To Lin Yi, keeping a close eye on Wei Xiaodong wasn't difficult. The difficult part was how he was going to take over the huge Y-Arc branch by himself. This was very different from when he was managing the Tiandan Pavilion on Middle Island. The Tiandan Pavilion was his newly opened elixir shop, and he had Tian Chan and Sydney to help him out. There weren't many miscellaneous things to do. All he had to do was refine elixirs and sell them, then someone would collect the money and keep the accounts. However, this Y-Arc branch, even if it wasn't one of the largest branches among the Hong Chamber of Commerce and was obviously inferior to the North Island branch, was still many times larger than Lin Yi's own Tiandan Pavilion. There were more than 100 people in charge of various affairs in the branch. Without sufficient experience, it would be impossible to manage it all. After all, Lin Yi wasn't an industry insider. Not only did he not have any management experience in this area, but he was also a layman when it came to business strategies and the like. There were many things he didn't understand at all. If he were to take over the Y-Arc branch, it was very likely that the entire branch would be paralyzed and unable to operate. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4369. However, if Lin Yi didn't personally take over, then Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao wouldn't be able to either. They were also amateurs, and they needed to return to the Morning Star Academy as soon as possible. They couldn't stay outside for long. Honest Chai, how about you help me take care of the Verdant Arc branch for the next period of time? Lin Yi suddenly suggested. Rather than forcing himself to do it, it would be better to leave it to a professional. Disregarding everything else, he had already witnessed this guy's bookkeeping ability. Moreover, he was a vice shopkeeper, and he had even testified against Wei Xiaodong. Asking him to help was a logical thing. Really? Honest Chai was elated upon hearing this, and quickly replied, Thank you for your trust, Vice Chairman. I will definitely do my best to pacify the branch, and guarantee that nothing will go wrong. Then I'll leave it to you. Lin Yi smiled faintly. Yes. Honest Chai nodded his head. It was no wonder that he was so excited. No matter what, Lin Yi was an outsider, and from the looks of it, he was an outsider. Helping him take care of the branch was equivalent to being a temporary shopkeeper. This was an extremely rare opportunity. Honest Chai had been the vice shopkeeper of the Verdant Arc branch for many years, and he had always been conscientious. He had never made any mistakes, but he was still far from becoming a shopkeeper. The reason was simple: in order to become a shopkeeper of a branch, one had to have outstanding achievements, and the other had to have a strong backing in the headquarters of Central Island. Both were indispensable, and Wei Xiaodong was a classic example. On the other hand, Honest Chai did not have either of these qualities. However, the opportunity had finally arrived. Everyone knew that once one became a substitute shopkeeper, it meant that he wouldn't be far from becoming a real shopkeeper. If everything went smoothly, he would be able to prove Wei Xiaodong and help Lin Yi manage the Pedicle Arc branch. This in itself would be a great achievement. If he could take this opportunity to gain the appreciation of Lin Yi and Hong Zhong, then he would have a backer. The two conditions that were originally out of his reach would be fulfilled in an instant. Would the position of the branch manager be far away? Honest Chai was not an idiot. After thinking through everything, he quickly got into the right state of mind. He immediately went out in high spirits to help calm the crowd, leaving Lin Yi alone in the hall. This fellow was just being a yes-man. How did he suddenly change into a different person? Let's hope this guy can get up. Lin Yi scratched his head as he muttered to himself, before walking out. If this Honest Chai was useless, then it would be troublesome to take over the Wei Arc branch in the future. How was it? Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao asked when they saw Lin Yi. Everything went smoothly. Now, let's see if this fella can take charge. Lin Yi pointed at Honest Chai. This type of yes-man coward, if he can take charge, then the sun will rise from the west. Wei Xiaodong, who was tied to the side, laughed coldly. At this moment, Honest Chai was preparing to say something to the crowd, but after being ridiculed by Wei Xiaodong, he immediately lost his momentum and became timid like before. He was, after all, a cowardly and honest person. After being bullied by Wei Xiaodong for so many years, a shadow had been left in his heart. Even when he gave Lin Yi the evidence, he was forced to do so. It was hard for him to go against Wei Xiaodong like this. In these few years, although Wei Xiaodong had yet to gain full control of the Wei Arc branch, he was already close to it. Not only Honest Chai, who was a mere figurehead, the others did not dare to go against him. Just like now, with just a casual sentence from him, everyone's expressions changed subtly. No matter which direction the sun rises from, you won't be able to see it. Wei Xiaodong was still feeling smug when Lin Yi walked over and slapped him until he fainted. Lin Yi curled his lips and said, "You already have one foot in the coffin, why are you still spouting so much nonsense?" Looking at Wei Xiaodong's crooked neck and foaming at the mouth, everyone's expression changed again. They subconsciously shrunk their necks. This man was too cruel. Wei Xiaodong was lucky not to have been slapped to death by him. From today onwards, all matters in the Wei Arc branch will be handled by Honest Chai. If anyone wants to cause trouble, then I don't mind stretching my arms and legs. Is everyone clear? Lin Yi said to the crowd. With the previous example in front of them, how could anyone dare to say no? They immediately nodded their heads. In the eyes of these ordinary workers, regardless of whether it was Wei Xiaodong or Lin Yi, they were all high-up immortals, while they were mere mortals. A fight between immortals was a matter of immortals, and mortals like them only needed to obediently follow the orders of the victors. All right, I'll leave the rest to you. Lin Yi gave Honest Chai a look. He could only help up to this point. The only thing he could do was to intimidate the crowd so that they wouldn't dare to have any disloyal thoughts. As for the rest, it would depend on Honest Chai's own ability. Honest Chai nodded his head gratefully and turned to the crowd, arranging their tasks for the next day. Lin Yi was initially worried that Honest Chai only had the ability to keep accounts, and would not be able to convince the crowd. After all, Honest Chai was too cowardly, and he did not have the aura of a leader. It was possible that the crowd would not listen to him, and he might even be a hopeless fool. However, Lin Yi soon found out that he was wrong. Honest Chai did not have the aura to intimidate the crowd, but he had a different style when handling matters. He was methodical and logical, and no matter who he arranged tasks for, no one would be able to find fault with it. Furthermore, he could make others feel that they were being put in an important position, and they would be willing to follow him. Over 100 people were arranged one by one, and not a single one of them frowned. Every single one of them happily accepted the task. Not only did Lin Yi have a whole new level of respect for Honest Chai, this was an extremely brilliant management style that others could not learn. After Honest Chai arranged everyone's tasks, and everyone dispersed to rest, Lin Yi could not help but say in bewilderment, "I was originally worried that you would not be able to control the situation, but who would have thought that you would be so good at managing people? It is a great loss for the Hong Merchant Association that a person of your standard is not able to become a branch manager. Vice President is overpraising me. Actually, it's nothing much. I've been the vice manager of this branch for more than 10 years, and I've personally done many of these things. Thus, I know who's most suitable for what job. In the past, I would often assign tasks to everyone, but ever since Wei Xiaodong appeared out of nowhere, I've stopped doing so." Honest Chai smiled bitterly. To be continued. Chapter 4370. Don't be fooled by his weak personality. His professional skills were actually quite high. Otherwise, with his pitiful connections, he wouldn't have been able to become the vice manager of the Wei Arc branch. Make the best use of your talents. Looks like I have to recommend someone to Hong Zhong. It's a pity that a talent like you is only a vice manager. Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. Now that Hong Zhong was in the position of the vice president, the biggest problem was that, in addition to being ostracized by others in the headquarters of Middle Island, he lacked outstanding talents. As a dignified vice president, he had to at least control a few branches. Otherwise, no one would listen to him, and he would become a commander without an army. As for this Honest Chai, even though he didn't have much contact with him, Lin Yi could at least confirm that with his abilities, he was more than qualified to be a branch manager. If he could get close to Hongzhong in the future, he wouldn't be mistreated, and at the same time, he would be able to support Hongzhong, killing two birds with one stone. Thank you, Vice Manager, for your recognition. Honest Chai was overjoyed. He had been waiting for this sentence. He had a faint premonition that this honorary vice president would be a benefactor in his life. Whether or not he would be able to become the manager of the branch depended entirely on this person. Do a good job, I won't mistreat you. Go. Linny nodded. Yes, I won't disappoint you. Honest Chai immediately left with 100 times more energy. He wasn't planning on sleeping tonight. In order to repay Lin Yi's kindness, his top priority right now was to find evidence of the crimes recorded in the account book, other than managing the branch. Only then would he be able to pin Wei Xiaodong down with one move, and make sure that he'd never be able to make a comeback. Kindness and authority. Buying people's hearts, when did you learn this? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao walked over and laughed as they looked at Honest Chai's back. Hee, I didn't learn it, but I've experienced this many times, so I naturally learned it. Linny smiled. The more things he'd been through, the more experienced he'd become when it came to handling things. Even though he wasn't that old, he had experienced all sorts of twists and turns. His experience wasn't something his peers could compare to. So he's self-taught? How thick-skinned? Wang Xinyan said with a smile. She exchanged a glance with Huang Xiaotao before asking, What do you plan to do next then? I've already written a letter to Hongzhong and asked him to deal with this matter. What we need to do next is to stay in the branch and wait for news from him, Linny said with a relaxed expression. He had already done what he could. How would he deal with the results afterwards? It all depended on Hongzhong's actions. All right then. Since that's the case, the two of us can go back, Wang Xinyan said. Earlier, they had agreed to return after dinner with the divine nun of the East Sea. Now that there was nothing else to do, it was inconvenient for the two of them to spend the night outside. All right. I'll send you off. Linny nodded. There's no need. You should look after this guy, in case he wakes up and causes trouble. Wang Xinyan pointed at Wei Xiaodong, who had fainted after being slapped by Lin Yi. Lin Yi thought about it, and slapped the unconscious Wei Xiaodong once more. He then dragged the guest that was sent flying out like a dead dog and tied him up. He then called Honest Chai over and had him watch over them personally. There's no problem now. Compared to sending the two of you back, I'll send you two back first. Compared to sending you back, everything else is just a passing cloud. All right. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao didn't know whether to laugh or cry. They felt the warmth in their hearts and enjoyed it. The three of them chatted and laughed. Lin Yi sent the two girls all the way to the inn where the Morning Star Academy students were staying. He watched them go up the stairs before returning to the Hong Merchants Association. On the second day, the news of the internal strife in the Hong Merchants Association spread like wildfire. It quickly spread throughout the streets and alleys of Weiqian City. After all, this was one of the largest merchants' associations in Weiqian City. Its reputation was not inferior to that of those influential figures. The news of Wei Xiaodong being controlled and the Hong Merchants Association changing hands quickly reached Qin Deli's ears. He immediately turned pale with fright. After being snubbed at the Heavens Equal Escort Agency last night, he thought that the matter had come to an end. Who would have thought that Qin Shutian's death was just a small prologue? The best part was yet to come. The Heavens Equal Escort Agency's Ling Yi and the two personal disciples of the Divine Nun of the Eastern Sea. They broke into the Hong Merchants Association overnight and suppressed Wei Xiaodong and the two guest experts. From then on, the Hong Merchants Association changed hands. Now, everyone in Weiqian City was talking about this matter vividly. The entire Weiqian City had almost become a storyteller's paradise. Qin Deli instantly panicked. He did not care about what happened to the Hong Merchants Association. Even if the entire Weiqian branch was burned down, it had nothing to do with him. However, Wei Xiaodong being controlled by someone else was fatal. It was not that he cared about this so-called cousin who was separated from him by God knows how many layers of relatives he had. The key was that Wei Xiaodong and Qin Deli were on the same boat. Wei Xiaodong and Qin Deli were on the same boat. Wei Xiaodong knew almost everything about him. If Wei Xiaodong could not withstand the interrogation and spilled the beans, not only would Wei Xiaodong be finished, even Qin Deli would be buried with him. No, he had to quickly think of a way to get Wei Xiaodong out. Qin Deli did not have time to think carefully. He hurriedly requested to see the three giants. He had to turn the situation around before the situation worsened. At this time, the three mountain opening stage giants of the Morning Star Academy were gathered together, preparing to attend the selection today. Seeing Qin Deli enter, their gazes all fell on him. "What do you want again?" Ling Yuanqing said with a slight frown. Although he did not lose his temper on the spot, what happened last night had made him rather angry. Now, he naturally did not have a good attitude towards Qin Deli. The gazes of the three giants fell on him. Qin Deli only felt his body sink, and he almost knelt down. Clearly, it was not only Ling Yuanqing who had an opinion about what happened last night. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea and Wei Hebei also did not like him. Disciple greets the three deans. Although Qin Deli was somewhat afraid, he had already been forced to this extent. If he did not quickly think of a way to turn the situation around, he might die a horrible death. He could only bite the bullet and continue. Disciple has just heard of something. The outside world is in an uproar. They say that the disciples of our Morning Star Academy helped the wicked and attacked the Hong Merchants Association with outsiders last night. Now, they have even taken control of the branch manager, Wei Xiaodong. This matter has a great impact and is detrimental to our academy's reputation. I hope the three deans can investigate this. There's actually such a thing? The three giants were slightly stunned. With their lofty status, ordinary people did not even have the opportunity to speak with them. Unless someone specially reported it, these rumors would not have reached their ears so quickly. Chapter 4371. It's absolutely true, this disciple doesn't dare to lie at all, Qin Deli hurriedly said. The three leaders looked at each other. The relationship between the Morning Star Academy and the Hong Chamber of Commerce had always been good. Now that the Crepe branch had suddenly met with such a change, and it was related to a disciple of the Academy, it was only right for them to ask about it. Who is it? Ling Yuanqing's face darkened as he asked. Although the Morning Star Academy encouraged their disciples to compete and never forbade them from causing trouble, but if the other party was the Hong Merchant Guild that they had a good relationship with, then it would be a little unreasonable. Yes. Qin Deli pretended to hesitate and stole a glance at the divine nun of the East Sea's expression. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and say it. Ling Yuanqing frowned. It's Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, Qin Deli said through gritted teeth. With that, Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei could not help but look at the divine nun of the East Sea. They immediately fell silent. Since it was a matter between Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, they obviously had to let the divine nun of the East Sea decide herself. This was the most basic form of respect. The divine nun of the East Sea was taken aback. She recalled that Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao had indeed returned rather late last night, but they were not angry at all. She immediately said, I'll only know what happened after I hear it from Yan'er and Xiaotao themselves. A moment later, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao appeared in front of the crowd and greeted the three heavyweights one by one. They smiled after hearing Qin Deli's speech. Master, martial uncles, the two of us did indeed go to the Hong Merchant Guild with Lingyi last night, and we did capture Wei Xiaodong. The two women looked at each other and replied unhurriedly. Is there really such a thing? Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei raised their eyebrows. From what they remembered, the two of them were obedient girls who never caused trouble. Why would they suddenly do something like this? The divine nun of the Eastern Sea was also a little surprised. Qin Deli, who was watching from the side, couldn't help but feel pleased with himself. It seemed that he had made the right decision to come here. As long as the divine nun of the Eastern Sea didn't protect Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao, then she wouldn't help an outsider like Lingyi. However, what the divine nun of the East Sea said next was, It almost made Chin Deli spit out a mouthful of blood. Both of you are not hurt, right? Why didn't you tell your master about this kind of thing? What if something happened to you? What should we do then? The divine nun of the Eastern Sea pulled the two women over and asked in concern. Chin Deli was dumbfounded on the spot. He had not had much contact with the divine nun of the Eastern Sea in the past. How could he know that this so-called monk was actually a person who would protect her children to the core? No. Wei Xiaodong and the other two were guest practitioners. Wouldn't it be embarrassing for you if they could get hurt like that? Sun Yan smiled, and Huang Xiaotao nodded in agreement. That's good. You can go out and train. However, you have to be careful. If it really doesn't work out, ask me to stand up for you. Don't force yourself, all right? The divine nun of the Eastern Sea warned. We know. We won't make you worry, master. The two girls hugged the divine nun of the East Sea's arms and smiled. Chin Deli's face turned green when he saw this scene. He could only turn to Ling Yuanqing for help. He hoped that the dean could stand out and uphold justice. Otherwise, not only would he not be able to salvage the situation today, he would probably get off lightly with a scolding. My two nieces, why did you go to the Hong Merchant Guild last night? Can you tell us? Ling Yuanqing was the dean after all. Even if he had no intentions of punishing the two girls, he had to understand the situation at the very least, just in case something happened in the future, and they were forced into a passive position. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea glanced at him, and nodded at Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. She nodded at Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. Although she was their master and wouldn't let them suffer any losses, she still had to explain the specifics of the matter to everyone. Reporting to Marshal Uncle, the two of us went to the Hong Chamber of Commerce last night to get rid of Wei Xiaodong, the cunning, treacherous, and evildoer. He had once set up a trap to harm the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Not only did he collude with pirates to rob his own goods, but he also brought them back to Hong Dali. Not only did he collude with pirates to steal his goods, he even forced the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency to pay 300,000 spiritual jade. Wang Xinyan explained. Oh? Something like that actually happened? The three mountain opening powerhouses could not help but be rather shocked. They all had some understanding of Wei Xiaodong, but they did not know he was actually so cunning and shameless. As the manager of a branch of the Hong Merchant Guild, he actually colluded with pirates to steal his own goods and blackmail the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Something like that was truly unheard of. Deans, there's a misunderstanding here. Chin Deli hurriedly explained. Back then, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency did indeed use this excuse to spread the news. They even brought people to the Hong Merchant Guild, but the truth proved that they did not have any credible evidence. They don't have any credible evidence. All of this is just something they fabricated out of thin air to cover up the fact that they didn't do a good job in protecting the escorts and restore the agency's image. Are you saying that we distorted the truth and deliberately framed Wei Xiaodong? Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao sneered at Chin Deli. Chin Deli, you've got some guts to speak ill of my disciple right in front of this old lady, eh? The divine nun of the East Sea's gaze was also hostile. She had never liked Chin Deli. Yet this guy actually dared to say that Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao framed Wei Xiaodong. Was he not looking to die? A mountainous pressure immediately descended on Chin Deli's head. With a plop, Chin Deli was forced to kneel on the spot. He immediately became extremely terrified, and his eyes almost began to bleed. The same situation had already happened at the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency last night, except that the one who died back then was Qin Kutian. Now it was his turn. Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei looked at one another, but they ignored this. In their eyes, although Chin Deli was also a purchasing officer, he was just a nobody, and he had no self-awareness at all. They had yet to settle the score with him for lying about the military yesterday, yet he had come to provoke the divine nun of the East Sea on his own today. What did he take the mountain opening powerhouses for? Even if an ant like him died, he would die for nothing. They would not even glance at him. Chin Deli could not help but piss his pants in fright. If he were given a chance to start over, He would never dare to come in and snitch on them even if he fled to the ends of the world. At that moment, he was tempted to slap himself in the face. He had really been kicked in the head by a donkey. He actually thought that the three powerhouses would believe him. Now, he had failed to turn the situation around, and he had lost his life instead. He really could not cry even if he wanted to. Qin Deli completely believed that he was about to follow in Qin Ketien's footsteps. He had already lost all hope, but after a while, he discovered that the pressure above his head did not grow any heavier. His body only spat out blood in a horrible shape. It had not reached the point where he would die on the spot. Chapter 4372. The divine nun of the Eastern Sea was not a murderous demon after all. She had only killed Qin Ketien last night because he had insulted her and threatened Huang Xiaotao. As her disciple, she naturally had to stand up for her disciple. However, today's matter had not reached the point where she needed to kill. "Spare me, headmaster of the Eastern Sea. I didn't say anything bad about the two ladies. I just felt that they might have been deceived, used." Qin Deli was quick-witted and hurriedly seized the last chance to explain. Hearing this, the killing intent on the divine nun of the Eastern Sea dissipated. In her heart, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were not unreasonable people, but it was not impossible to say that they had been deceived and used. "You're slandering me!" Huang Xiaotao immediately panicked. This guy purposely said that the two of them had been used. He clearly wanted to turn the spearhead to Lin Yi. He really did not give up. "That's right. You purposely tried to drive a wedge between us and Sister Xiaotao Sr. What are your intentions?" Wang Xinyan questioned coldly. "No, it's not that. Please calm down. The world is dangerous. You may know a person's face but not his heart. That Ling Yi clearly knew that you were the direct disciples of Headmaster of the Eastern Sea Academy, but he still purposely brought you to the Hong Merchant Group. Anyone with a discerning eye would know that he was using the two of you," Qin Deli said earnestly. "Using the tiger's skin as a flag, he clearly wanted to use the two of you to tie the Morning Star Academy to the Hong Merchant Group." As soon as he said this, the expressions of the three leaders changed slightly. From an outsider's point of view, this matter could indeed be interpreted in such a way. It was impossible for a single person to go against the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Ling Yi might really have such an intention by dragging Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao along. Qin Deli was very observant and knew that his words had an effect. He hurriedly struck while the iron was hot and continued. "No matter who was right or wrong in the matter between the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency and the Hong Merchant Group, our Morning Star Academy has no need or reason to interfere. Furthermore, that Ling Yi used the excuse of investigating Wei Xiaodong. I would like to ask, where did a small escort like him get the right to do so? In the end, he was just avenging a personal grudge, yet he still used flowery words to deceive and use the two ladies. Such despicable people deserve to die." The three leaders nodded slightly. What Wei Xiaodong said made sense. Even if there was something wrong with Wei Xiaodong, it was up to the Hong Chamber of Commerce to deal with it. It was not up to an unrelated escort to come knocking on their door in the middle of the night to capture him. "Humph, who said that Ling Yi isn't qualified?" Wang Xinyan glared at Qin Deli and said coldly. "He is the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Wei Xiaodong offended the higher-ups of his family. Shouldn't he clean up the family? Honorary vice guild leader?" The three big shots all had a look of surprise on their faces. The honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, no matter where he went, he could not be considered a small figure. That Ling Yi looked ordinary and didn't reveal anything. They didn't expect him to have such an identity. That's just what he calls himself. If he's really the honorary vice president, how could he be a lowly escort in the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency? Qin Deli hurriedly questioned. "Several months ago, my senior brother and I were on the Northern Island. We even had a meal and chatted with the new vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, Hong Zhong. Vice President Hong confirmed this to me in person." "Are you trying to say that even I'm lying?" Huang Xiaotao said coldly. This Qin Deli immediately choked. He obviously wanted to say that, but when he sneaked a glance at the divine nun of the EC's expression, he could only force it back down. Doubting an outsider like Lingyi was fine, but if he doubted Huang Xiaotao as well, then he would really be looking to die. Ling Yuanqing and Wei Hebei looked at the divine nun of the EC at the same time. Up to this point, there was no point in arguing any further. They could only wait for the divine nun of the EC to make the decision herself. I believe my disciple won't lie, the divine nun of the EC said indifferently. Believing Huang Xiaotao was obviously equivalent to believing Ling Yi. No one was surprised by this. She had always been a protective person. Between an outsider like Qin Deli and her own direct disciple, it was obvious who to choose. There was no suspense at all. Thank you, Master. Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao hugged the divine nun of the EC happily, one on the left and one on the right. Qin Deli's face was ashen. He was so gloomy that he almost coughed up blood again. He said rather reluctantly, "But is there something else?" The divine nun of the EC did not give him the opportunity to speak at all. She directly interrupted him. "Why are you so nosy?" "Are you nosy, Mother? You're the one complaining every time, and now you're even trying to accuse my disciple of lying. Do you not want to be a purchasing manager anymore? Or do you not want to stay in the academy anymore?" No. I'm fine now. I'll be taking my leave." Qin Deli scrambled out of fright, hurriedly fleeing for his life from the room. The divine nun of the EC was a major figure in the mountain establishment realm. She was definitely in existence who meant what she said. If he really angered her, not only would he lose his job, but he would even lose his life. Serves him right. Looking at Qin Deli's sorry figure, Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao looked at each other and smiled. This crafty person was quite good at quibbling. It was a pity that in front of their master-disciple relationship with the divine nun of the EC, he was simply asking for humiliation. He deserved it. The Morning Star Academy held the selection ceremony as scheduled, and the focus of the entire Weiwan city shifted to the selection ceremony. The discussions about the Hong Chamber of Commerce in the streets became much quieter, and with less attention from the outside world, there were naturally fewer disturbances. The entire Hong merchant group also gradually returned to normal under Honest Chai's management. Everyone was no longer in fear and trepidation, and they gradually began to accept reality. The era of Wei Xiaodong had already passed, and the Velvet City branch was about to welcome a new beginning. In these few days, aside from having people keep a close eye on Wei Xiaodong, Lin Yi did not idle around. Right now was the crucial period of investigating Wei Xiaodong. Apart from Honest Chai's account book, how much more decisive evidence could be found would depend on the harvest during this period of time. Under Honest Chai's hard work, the harvest in these few days was not small. Seeing Wei Xiaodong's shameless and flawless business being dug out by Honest Chai, Lin Yi was overjoyed, but at the same time, he could not help but sigh in admiration. Honest Chai was truly a talent. At least when it came to business management, auditing, and bookkeeping, this fellow could be said to be a true expert. In comparison, Wei Xiaodong's entry-level bookkeeping methods were simply child's play in front of him. Very quickly, Honest Chai found the whereabouts of the 300,000 spiritual jades that the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had compensated. Lin Yi immediately sent someone to inform Qi Wenhan. Chapter 4373. Greetings, Brother Ling. No, President Ling. After not seeing each other for a few days, Qi Wenhan's attitude towards Lin Yi was much more respectful than before. He no longer dared to be as casual and natural as before. This was not surprising. If Lin Yi was just a genius, then he could still call him a brother. But it was different now. News of the incident at the Hong Merchant Guild had spread everywhere, and Qi Wenhan naturally knew about it. He had never thought that Lin Yi would be the honorary vice president of the Hong Merchant Guild. The Hong Chamber of Commerce was one of the top chambers of commerce on the entire Heavenly Tier Island. Any one of its honorary vice presidents was an incredible figure. Although Qi Wenhan was the young master of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency, he still knew his own limits. The Hong Chamber of Commerce wasn't someone he could afford to associate with. Therefore, even though he knew what had happened to the Hong Merchant Guild, Chi Wan did not dare to come looking for Lin Yi. Not only that, he was afraid that if he came looking for Lin Yi, he would be misunderstood by Lin Yi as asking for the 300,000 spirit jades. If that happened, he would not be able to explain himself. But now that Lin Yi had taken the initiative to look for him, it was naturally a different matter. President Ling? Lin Yi could not help but be taken aback. He immediately punched Chi Wan and laughed. Brother Chi, why are you treating me like an outsider? Are you not going to recognize me as a friend? No, how could that be? As long as Brother Ling recognizes me, I, Chi Wan, will be your friend for life. Chi Wan could not help but laugh. Their statuses were too different. He had thought that Lin Yi was just pretending to be polite. Now that their statuses were out in the open, there was naturally no need to pretend anymore. However, Lin Yi's attitude made him breathe a sigh of relief. Their statuses were different, but at least their relationship had not changed. They could still continue to be friends. That's good. I don't have many friends to begin with, and there are even fewer who are as congenial as you, Brother Chi. If you don't recognize me, I will regret it for a while. Lin Yi patted Chi Wenhan's shoulder and laughed heartily. If I miss a friend like Brother Ling, I will regret it for the rest of my life. Chi Wenhan also laughed heartily, and the strange barrier between them immediately disappeared. So, there's no need for such formalities between us. Since we're friends, why are you treating me like an outsider? Lin Yi smiled and said, This time, I called you over for no other reason than to retrieve the 300,000 spirit jades that you gave to Wei Xiaodong previously. Now we are returning them to their rightful owner. I've already asked Vai's shopkeeper Chai to prepare everything. You just need to hand it over to him. Really? Chi Wan was overjoyed. Although the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was a prominent force in the Verdant Arc territorial waters, it was absolutely insignificant when compared to the entire Heavenstep Island. 300,000 spirit jades was no small sum for the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. They had scrounged together for a long time before finally managing to scrape together enough spirit jades. It was not an exaggeration at all. Chi Wan had already accepted the reality, and was prepared to empty his own pockets and grit his teeth to endure this difficult period of time. Now, they could actually recover what they had lost. Ho, do you think I'd lie to you? Lin Yi smiled and called Honest Chai over. Bring Brother Chi to hand over the items. Then I'll go first. Chi Wan cupped his hands at Lin Yi in excitement. He hurriedly followed Honest Chai to hand over the items. In less than the time it took to brew a cup of tea, Chi Wan returned. His face was filled with joy. He thanked Lin Yi profusely. Brother Ling, you've really helped the escort agency this time. On behalf of the entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, I thank you for your great kindness. You're too kind. It's only right for me to return the items to their rightful owners. There's no need to be so courteous. Lin Yi smiled. To be honest, I still feel like I'm dreaming. I can't thank you enough for your kindness. Brother Ling, I won't say anything else. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency will never forget your kindness, Chi Wan said solemnly. All right, what's the point of saying these things between friends? If you're not busy, sit down and have a cup of tea with me. Lin Yi smiled and poured a cup for Chi Wan. It was all top-grade spiritual tea that he found in Wei Xiaodong's room. It would be a waste not to drink it, so it was a good thing for the two of them. All right. Chi Wan nodded repeatedly. At times like this, unless it was a matter of life and death, he would not bother with the matters of the escort agency. What could be more important than drinking tea with Lin Yi? Oh right, how's the agency these few days? Did anything happen? Lin Yi asked as he sipped on the spiritual tea. Not really. Everything is normal. Brother Ling, if you're free, why don't you come back to the agency and let me treat you to some good tea? Chi Wan smiled. He originally wanted to ask for Lin Yi's help to participate in the Southern Continent's Escort Agency Festival. But now, he was too embarrassed to mention it. Lin Yi was the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. If he still wanted him to continue being an escort for his agency, he would be too shameless. Be a guest? Then forget it. Lin Yi pursed his lips. These words shocked Qi Wenhan, and he could not help but feel embarrassed. He did not know what to do. But then, Lin Yi said, "No matter what, I'm still an escort in name. It's only right for me to visit the agency." "How can you say I'm going to be a guest?" "Hey, Brother Ling, you scared me. I thought you looked down on our little equal heaven escort agency." Qi Wenhan laughed. As the two of them were talking and laughing, a young worker suddenly ran in from the door. He looked at Lin Yi anxiously, as if he had something to report. But seeing that Qi Wenhan was also there, he hesitated. "Brother Ling, why don't I leave for a while?" Qi Wenhan asked. "No need. Brother Qi is not an outsider. If you have something to say, say it in person." Lin Yi stopped him. "Yes, Vice President. Something big just happened outside. The Poison Eye mercenary group has announced that from today onwards, they have formed a strategic alliance with the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. From now on, both sides will advance and retreat together," the worker reported. "What?" Before Lin Yi could speak, Qi Wenhan had already cried out in shock. His face was full of anxiety. "What's wrong?" Lin Yi could not help but feel a little strange. He naturally knew about the Poison Eye mercenary group. After all, he had dealt with them many times. But this Dragon Boat Escort Agency, he had never heard of it. "Brother Ling, you may not know this, but this Dragon Boat Escort Agency is the second largest escort agency in the Wayark territorial waters. Their strength and status are only below our equal Heaven Escort Agency. I did not expect them to ally with the Poison Eye mercenary group." Even now, Qi Wenhan had not recovered from his shock. He still found it hard to believe. One is the second largest escort agency in the area, and the other is the Poison Eye mercenary group. For them to ally with each other at this time, I'm afraid they are up to no good. Lin Yi also frowned. Chapter 4374. During this period of time, apart from being busy with the Hong Chamber of Commerce's affairs, he had also specially transferred 2 men from Weiwan City to keep an eye on the Poison Eye mercenary group's every move, just in case. After all, Qing Ketian was dead. He was the young master of the Poison Eye mercenaries. Although Qing Haonan wouldn't dare to seek revenge against the divine nun of the Eastern Sea, he had died in the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Coupled with the past grievances between the two, it was hard to say if he wouldn't seek revenge against the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Lin Yi had people keep an eye on the Poison Eye mercenaries so that he could know their movements in advance. That way, he could respond quickly. He didn't expect Qing Haonan to cooperate with the Dragon Boat Agency instead of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Brother Ling is right. They are not friendly. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency has always upheld the principle of being kind to others in the Weiwan territorial waters. After all, one more friend means one more path, and one more enemy means one more wall. However, we have 2 enemies that we've been suppressing all these years. They are the Poison Eye mercenaries and the Dragon Boat Agency. Qi Wenhan nodded. Brother Qi, can you guess their intentions for joining forces now? Lin Yi asked. The South Continent Escort Agency Festival is about to begin. If I'm not mistaken, they are joining forces to push the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency out of the 5 major escort agencies. Qi Wenhan did not treat Lin Yi as an outsider and analyzed everything in detail. The Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was one of the top 5 escort agencies in the South Continent. Even though it was ranked last, it was still the largest in the Verdant Arc territorial waters. However, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency was unwilling to be left out. Now that they had suddenly made such a move, it was obvious that they wanted to take over. So, this South Continent Escort Agency festival will have to be handled carefully. He wasn't sure what the Dragon Boat Escort Agency style was, but the Poison Eye mercenaries were definitely up to no good. They were using this opportunity to take revenge on the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. Who knew what sort of dirty tricks they'd come up with? Brother Ling, This is a serious matter. I must go back and make arrangements. I can't stay. Please forgive me. Chi Wan was restless and couldn't continue drinking tea with Lin Yi. He immediately stood up and said goodbye. Okay, I'll go back and take a look when I have time. I won't keep you here today. Lin Yi immediately stood up to send him off. After sending off Chi Wan, who had a heavy heart, he turned to the shop assistant and asked, I asked you to inquire about Wu Baoliang and Lu Bianren. Is there any news? He didn't just send people to keep an eye on the Poison Eye mercenary group. At the same time, he was also inquiring about Wu Baoliang and Lu Bianren. Although he had already asked Chi Wan for help, one more way meant one more possibility. Not yet. The waiter shook his head. All right, you can leave now. Lin Yi waved his hand. This kind of thing couldn't be rushed. Even the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency's network of contacts had not yielded any news after such a long time. It was obvious that it was not easy to find them. At this time, Honest Chai walked over with a letter in his hand. He passed it to Lin Yi excitedly. Vice President Hong's letter has arrived. Oh? So fast? Lin Yi was taken aback. The distance from the South Island to the North Island was more than 10,000 miles. In addition, Hong Zhong's reaction time after receiving the letter, even if it was just a simple communication back and forth, he still hadn't gone to the Middle Island to negotiate with the higher-ups of the headquarters. It shouldn't be so fast, right? It had only been a few days? You might not know this, but our Hong Merchant Association has a specialized teleportation channel. Although it isn't like those high-grade teleportation channels that can transport people together, it's not a problem to transport some important resources. We usually use this channel to send messages, so we don't need to rely on flying spirit beasts. It's not just our Hong Merchant Association, other top forces also have such channels, but ordinary forces don't have them. Honest Chai explained with a smile. I see. Lin Yi nodded in realization. Any teleportation channel was a strategic resource, even if it was just a simple material transport channel. It was like a treasure ship, a symbol of top forces. Ordinary forces shouldn't even think about using it. However, even if the time needed to send a letter was saved, the fact that Hong Zhong could respond so quickly showed that he was very concerned about this matter. Honest Chai waited impatiently by the side. Lin Yi smiled. He knew that Honest Chai was anxious to know the result. At this moment, he definitely wasn't in the mood to do anything else, so he opened the letter and read through it. In the letter, Hong Zhong's first sentence was an apology. Although Wei Xiaodong only started to change in recent years, with Hong Zhong's eyesight, he couldn't help but say that he had eyes but failed to see for making such a mistake. He actually almost introduced this scum to Lin Yi as a friend. It was fortunate that Lin Yi didn't use Hong Zhong's name to befriend Wei Xiaodong. Otherwise, with Wei Xiaodong's wily style, he would definitely not let him know about these matters. Even now, he might still be in the dark and still think that Wei Xiaodong was a kind and honest person. Hong Zhong's attitude in the letter, on the other hand, made Lin Yi quite happy. He approved of everything Lin Yi did against Wei Xiaodong with both hands and feet. This was actually very rare. After all, he had never been to the Weiqian territorial waters. Everything he knew, including the evidence in the account book, was actually just Lin Yi's side of the story. On one side, it was Lin Yi whom he had just met, and on the other side, it was his old friend of many years. If it was someone else, they would probably have a hard time deciding. But for Hong Zhong to express his stance so clearly, other than being a reasonable person, it also showed his unreserved trust in Lin Yi. How is it? Honest Chai was a little impatient and asked cautiously. The Hong Merchant Guild's decision on how to deal with Wei Xiaodong would directly determine his future. Especially if they couldn't deal with Wei Xiaodong this time. When Wei Xiaodong recovered, he might not dare to do anything to the honorary Vice President Lin Yi, but dealing with a mere Honest Chai was more than enough. At that time, the consequences would be unimaginable, and he might not even be able to keep his life. I can't say. Lin Yi shook his head helplessly. Ah? Honest Chai's heart instantly fell into an ice cellar, and his hands and feet instantly turned cold. He was originally a cowardly and honest person. This time, he stood out to testify against Wei Xiaodong because he was forced to do so. Since things had already reached this point, he could only walk down the dark path with no room for regret. If he couldn't suppress Wei Xiaodong to death this time, then he would really be finished. Hong Zhong said in the letter that this time's matter is rather troublesome. There are people from the Middle Island headquarters who are trying to protect Wei Xiaodong. He has already used his position as the honorary vice president and my position as the honorary vice president to put pressure on the headquarters, but there is no way to punish Wei Xiaodong. Lin Yi smiled bitterly. Chapter 4375. What should I do? Honest Chai almost fainted from fear. His face was deathly pale, without a trace of blood. Don't worry, we might not be able to punish Wei Xiaodong this time, but there's no way he'll be able to stay in the branch anymore. He's not much of a threat to you, Lin Yi comforted. Really? Honest Chai hurriedly asked. It's true, Hong Zhong has already said that the worst-case scenario is for Wei Xiaodong to be recalled back to the Central Island headquarters and become an ordinary manager. However, he still has to personally make a trip to the Central Island headquarters to punish Wei Xiaodong. As for whether or not he will succeed, we'll only know when the time comes. Lin Yi nodded. Recalled back to the Central Island to become a manager? Honest Chai finally let out a long sigh and said with lingering fear. That's fine. If he continues to stay here as a shopkeeper, I really won't be able to live. Haha, you don't have to worry about this. Not to mention Wei Xiaodong being recalled back to the Central Island, even if he stays here, he won't be able to touch a single hair on your head. After all, we're here. Moreover, Hong Zhong has to personally go to the Central Island headquarters. The final outcome is still unknown. What I said earlier was only the worst-case scenario. Lin Yi smiled as he patted Honest Chai's shoulder. Oh, that's good, that's good. Honest Chai was afraid that he would be thrown to the side by Lin Yi and Hong Zhong if this matter was left unsettled. After hearing that, he finally felt more at ease. You can relax. Hong Zhong isn't an ordinary character that can be easily fooled. No matter how strong Wei Xiaodong's backing is, this matter won't be left unsettled. Lin Yi smiled. Even though Hong Zhong didn't say it clearly in the letter, he could more or less guess the other party's intentions. Hong Zhong's trip to the Central Island headquarters this time was to negotiate with the higher-ups of the headquarters. Either he wanted to punish Wei Xiaodong, or he wanted the higher-ups to make concessions in other areas. Otherwise, the higher-ups would have to make concessions in other areas. It might not be completely satisfactory, but it would have to be one of the two. Lin Yi immediately wrote back to Hong Zhong. There were only 2 sentences in the letter. First, there was no problem on his side and everything was up to Hong Zhong. Second, the Y-Arc branch's deputy manager, Honest Chai, could be used. With the tacit understanding between them, Lin Yi believed that these 2 sentences were enough for Hong Zhong to understand his meaning. No matter what, Honest Chai was a useful talent, and he didn't have any background. Now that Hong Zhong was in need of manpower, there was no harm in taking him under his wing. As for how to deal with Wei Xiaodong, according to Lin Yi's temperament, he would naturally eliminate all evil, this kind of heartless scum. It would be best to kill him with a single blow. However, he could understand Hong Zhong's helplessness. After all, he was a member of the Hong Chamber of Commerce, and he had a backer in the Middle Island headquarters. He wasn't someone who could be killed as he pleased. Since Hong Zhong had come forward to take over this matter, no matter what the result was, Lin Yi would not say anything and return the favor. Hong Zhong trusted him unreservedly, and he naturally trusted Hong Zhong 100% as well. Moreover, he was only the honorary deputy chairman of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. He had neither the authority nor the obligation to deal with Wei Xiaodong. Furthermore, there was no personal enmity between them. This time, he had acted purely because he could not stand such a shameless person. As for how the Hong Chamber of Commerce would be dealt with in the end, Lin Yi could not and did not want to care. After getting Honest Chai to send out the letter, Lin Yi spent the next 2 days talking and chatting with Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. The Morning Star Academy's selection in the Y-Arc waters had been going on for a few days, and it was almost over. There was not much time left for him to spend with the two ladies. Lin Yi planned to accompany the two ladies until they left. After all, they would be thousands of miles apart in the future. He didn't know how long it would be before he could be with them again. However, there was an interlude in the middle. Housekeeper Song of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency had arrived. Young Hero Ling, can I invite you to our Heavens Equal Escort Agency? Everyone in the agency is looking forward to seeing you. Do you have the time? Housekeeper Song asked with a smile and cupped his hands. Housekeeper Song, I'm a nominal escort of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. I can just ask someone to send a message. Why do you need to invite me personally? Housekeeper Song asked with a smile. In terms of strength, this Housekeeper Song was the number 2 person in the agency. In terms of status, he was not below the young master, Qi Wenhan. For such a person to personally invite him, it was already a very serious matter. Young Hero Ling, you're exaggerating. With your status and the favor you've done for the agency, it should at least be the young master. It's already impolite of me to come personally. Housekeeper Song smiled apologetically. However, the head escort has returned today, and the young master can't leave at the moment. So, I can only invite you on his behalf. Please forgive me if I've been impolite. You're too kind. Housekeeper Song, I really can't accept your words. Since that's the case, let's go. Lin Yi agreed readily. Since the head escort had returned and specially invited him at this critical juncture, it was obvious that he wanted him to meet this head escort. It just so happened that Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao were accompanying their master at this time, and there was nothing important at the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Lin Yi happened to be free, so it was not a bad idea to make a trip to the Heavens Equal Escort Agency and meet this head escort whom he had heard of for a long time but had never met before. That's great! This way, please! Housekeeper Song was overjoyed. He hurriedly sent someone back to the agency to report the news, while he accompanied Lin Yi back. He even purposely stayed a step behind to show his respect. Lin Yi was not only the Heavens Equal Escort Agency's great benefactor, but also the honorary vice president of the Hong Chamber of Commerce. Furthermore, he had a close relationship with the direct disciple of the divine nun of the Eastern Sea. Such a person was no small matter where he was placed. Normal people would not be able to invite him at all. Even though he was the head housekeeper of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Lin Yi had agreed so readily. After passing through a few streets and alleys, the two of them arrived at the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. At this moment, the entire agency was decorated with lanterns and streamers. There were layers of people inside and outside the agency, and every single one of them had a joyous expression on their faces. It was a rare scene of a festive occasion. Lin Yi could not help but feel rather surprised when he saw this. Wasn't it just the return of the head escort? It's not like he was an outsider. Was there a need for such a grand celebration? However, it could be seen from the faces of the escorts that their joy came from the bottom of their hearts. They weren't forced smiles to add to the crowd. It was clear that this chief escort, whom they had never met before, was definitely not a simple character. This was what the hearts of the people truly yearned for. At least on this point, Qi Wenhan was still very far away from his old man. Chapter 4376. Young Hero Ling, please wait a moment, Housekeeper Song said as he quickly walked into the escort agency. A moment later, a large group of people came out, led by a burly man. He was tall and sturdy, and his entire body exuded a fierce and domineering aura. It could be said that he did not have to be angry to have an awe-inspiring presence. Accompanying this burly man were the young master, Qi Wenhan, and Housekeeper Song. Without a doubt, this burly man was the head of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Qi Wenhan's father, Chief Escort Qi Mingyuan. Ha ha ha, young Hero Ling, I've long heard of your name. It's a pity that I've always been busy, or else I would have flown back long ago to thank you in person. On behalf of the entire escort agency, I, Qi Mingyuan, thank you, young hero Ling, for your great kindness. I will never dare to forget it. Qi Mingyuan cupped his fists and walked over with a hearty laugh. Seeing this, Lin Yi could not help but praise him in his heart. Although this man seemed crude and boorish, there was a natural forthrightness in his actions. Even a stranger he had never met was able to close the distance between them in an instant. It was not a coincidence that the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was able to become one of the top 5 escort agencies in the South Continent. There was a reason for this. Greetings, Chief Escort Qi. You're too kind. I've heard a lot about you, Chief Escort Qi. Today, my wish has been fulfilled. Lin Yi immediately responded with a smile. At the same time, he greeted Qi Wuhan, who was beside him. Brother Qi, it's been a few days since we last met. How have you been? How have you been? Father has returned today, so I took the liberty to invite Brother Ling over. I hope I didn't delay your official business. Qi Wuhan apologized. I'm just an idler. What business do I have? Besides, Chief Escort Qi has returned. As a nominal escort of the agency, even if Brother Qi didn't invite me, I would still have come to join in the fun. Lin Yi smiled as he shook his head. Haha, young hero Ling is a straightforward person, just to my liking. If it weren't for the fact that you and Wuhan are of the same generation, I would want to become sworn brothers with you. Qi Mingyuan teased from the side. Everyone in the audience also followed and laughed loudly. It was a scene of joy and peace. When Lin Yi heard this, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Qi Wenhan's father was a wonderful person. He seemed rough and forthright, but he didn't seem out of place. Not only did he not feel the slightest constraint when interacting with him, but he was also relaxed and happy, which was very rare. By the way, I've specially invited young hero Ling over today. I have an important matter to announce to everyone in the escort agency. Qi Mingyuan suddenly announced to the crowd in a clear voice. Everyone instantly quietened down and waited for him to continue. He then continued. As the head of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, I hereby announce that from today onwards, young hero Ling will forever be the honorary head of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. The crowd burst into an uproar as soon as these words were spoken. In the entire Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, aside from Qi Mingyuan, the chief escort agency, there were only a handful of escorts who could become an escort leader. Any escort leader was the absolute core of the agency, and their status and treatment were far superior to that of ordinary escorts. As for the one that Qi Mingyuan had promised to Lin Yi, although the word honorary had been added in front, it was still more powerful than the actual power of an escort leader. To a greater extent, it was actually a halo of status. Even so, it still caused everyone in the audience to be green with envy. This was because this not only represented the high status in the agency. At the same time, it also meant that if Lin Yi needed it, he could mobilize the power of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency at any time and place. The power he wielded was not to be underestimated. How can this be? Lin Yi was also a little shocked. This was different from the honorary professorship in the secular world's universities. It was not just a mere title. If they really wanted to use this as an excuse, there was a huge profit to be made. To the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, this was an undeniably heavy gift. Young hero Ling, listen to me. Don't be in a hurry to reject me. Qi Mingyuan smiled as he explained. I'm not doing this because I want to tie you down or do anything. With your strength and status, I know that this is unrealistic. I'm doing this purely to express the agency's gratitude to you. This time, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was able to regain its reputation and recoup its losses. This is all because of your strength alone. Giving you only the title of honorary head of escort agency for such a great favor is already considered very lenient. That's right. This is our sincerity, and it was not a spur-of-the-moment decision. It was a decision that my father made after careful consideration. Brother Ling, don't reject it. Qi Wenhan, who was standing at the side, also tried to persuade him. Then, all right, it would be impolite for me to refuse. Seeing this, Lin Yi could only nod. After all, the title of honorary escort agency leader was only a title in name. He did not need to stay in the Heavens Equal Escort Agency forever, so it did not matter to him. After all, he already had the title of honorary vice president of the Hung Chamber of Commerce. Now that he had the title of honorary escort agency leader, it did not matter much. Haha, that's great! Young Hero Ling is indeed a straightforward person. This is how it should be. Qi Mingyuan, Qi Wenhan, and the others immediately looked delighted. They crowded around Lin Yi enthusiastically and said, "Come, please come in. The banquet is ready. Let's have a good meal." The crowd entered the banquet hall and gave way to Lin Yi. Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan, the father and son, personally accompanied him on both sides. On the dining table, there were all kinds of priceless delicacies. A rough estimate was that this table of dishes alone would cost at least 1,000 spirit jades. Hee, as the saying goes, the tongue is short of the mouth. Chief Escort Agency Leader Qi, it seems that this time, I have no choice but to participate in the South Continent's Escort Agency gathering. Lin Yi could not help but laugh. This is all up to young Hero Ling. If it's convenient for you to help us, we would naturally be more than happy. But if it's not convenient, that's fine too. We can all understand. Young Hero Ling, please don't worry about this kind of thing. Otherwise, we will really feel sorry for you, Qi Mingyuan said with a serious expression. He was speaking from the bottom of his heart, and he knew that forcing Lin Yi to come out wasn't going to make him use his full strength. Just making Lin Yi feel uncomfortable wasn't worth it, and it wasn't worth it if they forced Lin Yi to come out. Not to mention how much of his strength Lin Yi was willing to use when the time came, it wasn't worth it. Yes, Brother Ling, there's one more thing I want to tell you. There's some progress on the matter you asked us to find out, Qi Wenhan said from the side. Oh? Lin Yi raised his eyebrows and his eyes immediately lit up. How is it? This person, Wu Baoliang, is indeed still in the Wei Arc territorial waters. And as far as I know, ever since he came here, he has never left. He has always been staying in Wei Arc City, Qi Wenhan said. Chapter 4377. In the beginning, we also investigated in this direction. We wanted to start with the missing girls, but after investigating for so long, we found that there weren't many missing girls in the Sea of Verdant Arc recently. It wasn't until this coincidental opportunity that we realized we had made a mistake. Qi Wenhan shook his head and smiled bitterly. Mistake? What do you mean? Lin Yi was a little surprised. A leopard couldn't change its spots, especially since Wu Baoliang was an evil cultivator. His cultivation method meant that he couldn't turn over a new leaf unless he stopped cultivating. Brother Ling, do you know that Qing Haonan and Qing Qitian also cultivate a yin harvesting technique? Qi Wenhan asked. Of course. Lin Yi nodded. The first person he and Huang Xiaotao saw when they arrived at the Sea of Verdant Arc was Qing Qitian, and this guy tried to steal Huang Xiaotao. It would be strange if he could forget this. In truth, the father and son pair did not cultivate this kind of yin harvesting cultivation method a few years ago. It was only after a military advisor came to the Poison Eye mercenary group that the father and son pair began to cultivate this cultivation method. This cultivation method is of the same origin as the evil cultivation method that Brother Ling mentioned that specializes in poisoning women. At that time, I was still puzzled. Why did the father and son pair suddenly start to cultivate this kind of evil cultivation method? Only now do I know that their yin harvesting technique was taught by the new military advisor, Qi Wenhan explained. So, the new military advisor of the Poison Eye mercenary band is... Lin Yi's heart moved. Yes, it is the Wu Baoliang that Brother Ling is looking for. Qi Wenhan nodded heavily and said, Not long after this person arrived in the Verdant Arc Sea, he became acquainted with the Qing father and son. Moreover, he has been holed up in the Poison Eye mercenary group, living in seclusion. His actions are extremely secretive, and he rarely shows himself outside. Therefore, very few people know about him. Most people wouldn't pay much attention to him if they saw him. If that's the case. If he doesn't poison a lot of women, how does he continue to cultivate his evil technique? Lin Yi asked curiously. I've asked my informant to find out. I don't know the exact reason, but ever since Wu Baoliang joined the Poison Eye mercenary group, he often spent time with the Qing father and son. According to my speculation, the three of them should be studying the mental cultivation method. They should have improved the mental cultivation method, so they don't kill so many first ladies like before. As Qi Huahan spoke, he revealed a piece of information. Wu Baoliang's position in the Poison Eye mercenary group is very high. The women he usually uses for cultivation are actually shared with the Qing father and son, so it's very difficult for outsiders to notice. Puff! Lin Yi almost burst out laughing when he heard this. The Qing father and son were really outrageous. They played with an outsider like Wu Baoliang all day long. Were they not afraid of getting sick? I see. But since his whereabouts are so secretive, how did you find out? Lin Yi asked. Hee. If it wasn't for the cooperation between the Poison Eye mercenary group and the Dragon Boat Escort Agency, we might not be able to find Wu Baoliang even after another year of investigation. Qi Huahan laughed. Oh? What do you mean? Lin Yi was a little puzzled. The announcement of cooperation was one thing, but the two parties couldn't possibly announce the names of all the people, unless there was something wrong with their brains. The reason is very simple. The Dragon Boat Escort Agency also wants to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event. According to the rules of the event, all the escort agencies that register to participate must provide a list of participating escorts. We are on the list provided by the Dragon Boat Escort Agency. We found a new name. It's the Wu Baoliang that Brother Ling is looking for. Qi Huahan laughed. No wonder. Lin Yi finally understood. This made sense. At this critical juncture, the Dragon Boat Escort Agency suddenly merged with the Poison Eye mercenary group. It must be to prepare for the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event. Transferring experts from the Poison Eye mercenary group to participate in the event was a matter of course. As the military advisor of the Poison Eye mercenary group, it was only natural that Wu Baoliang was included. This was good. If Wu Baoliang had been hiding in the Poison Eye mercenary group, even if they knew about him, Lin Yi couldn't do anything to him. After all, it was impossible for him to charge into the Poison Eye mercenary group alone and kill him. With Lin Yi's current strength, it would be impossible for him to succeed. However, since Wu Baoliang was determined to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event, it was a good opportunity. As long as Lin Yi also participated, it would be justifiable to kill him. Moreover, he could also help the Heavens Equal Escort Agency. It was killing two birds with one stone. It seems that even Wu Baoliang is asking me to participate in the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Event. If I don't go, it won't be right. Lin Yi couldn't help but laugh. Haha, it's great that young hero Ling is willing to help us. We can't thank you enough. Moreover, we're all on the same side, so let's not waste words. Come, pour it all into the wine. Qi Mingyuan and Qi Huahan looked at each other and smiled. They raised their cups at the same time to show their gratitude. Haha, in your eyes, I'm helping the escort agency, but in my eyes, it's actually the agency that gave me a chance to openly deal with Wu Baoliang. It's a mutually beneficial thing, so there's no need to thank me. Lin Yi smiled and immediately raised his cup to drink. Great! Qi Mingyuan and Qi Huahan also drank to the end. Steward Song and the others around them also drank with them and cheered loudly. By the way, Brother Qi, have you heard anything about my senior brother Liu Bianren? Lin Yi turned to ask. There's no news about this. After all, there are too few characteristics. Brother Ling, your senior brother Liu must be a low-key person and won't appear in public. Even if he does, he won't attract attention. So, until now, I haven't heard anything valuable. Qi Huahan shook his head and then said, But Brother Ling, don't worry. I've already spread the news. In the future, as long as your senior brother Liu appears, we should be able to get wind of it. You can just wait for the news with peace of mind. Well, that's all I can do for now. Although Lin Yi was a little worried about Liu Bianren, It was useless to be impatient when it came to finding someone, so he could only put it aside for now. This banquet could be said to be a happy occasion for both the guests and the host. Whether it was Chi Wenhan, who was already familiar with him, or Chi Mingyuan, who was meeting for the first time, the father and son were compatible with Lin Yi. They didn't need to pretend to deal with each other, nor did they feel awkward or speechless. It was a very natural interaction between friends, happy and harmonious. Chapter 4378. What's wrong? Seeing Honest Chai's anxious expression, Lin Yi thought that something had happened. Vice Chairman Hong has sent a letter along with the headquarters resolution. Please take a look. Honest Chai could not hide his nervousness as he handed the 2 sealed letters to Lin Yi. These 2 letters not only determined Wei Xiaodong's fate, but also Honest Chai's. No wonder he was so nervous. Really? So fast? Lin Yi was slightly shocked. He did not notice it before, but this trip to the verdant Arc territorial waters gave him a deep understanding of the Hong Merchant Association's efficiency. It was indeed worthy of being the second-ranked merchant association in Heaven Stage Island. Such efficiency was not something an ordinary faction could compare to. Lin Yi took the 2 letters from Honest Chai. In fact, they were talking about the same matter. Just as Hong Zhong had said in his previous letter, the upper echelons of the Hong Merchant Association had decided to recall Wei Xiaodong back to Middle Island as an ordinary manager. The punishment for Wei Xiaodong remains unchanged. It seems like the backer behind him really values him to this extent. Lin Yi could not help but sneer. How could this be? Honest Chai's face turned pale as he stood there in a daze. He did not know if it was fear or regret. His mind was blank and he did not know what to do. Wei Xiaodong was only an ordinary manager in name when he returned to Middle Island. Whether it was status or authority, he was much weaker than the branch's vice manager. However, the other party had a backer behind him. If he really wanted to deal with Honest Chai, wouldn't it be a matter of a few words? Seeing Honest Chai's apocalyptic reaction, Lin Yi could not help but smile. This guy was indeed an expert in the management of a merchant association. He was a rare talent, but he could not change his cowardly nature. If he did not have a powerful backer behind him, he would not be able to make a name for himself in this lifetime. Other than the decision on Wei Xiaodong, there is another matter regarding you. Lin Yi's expression was unfathomable as he kept Honest Chai in suspense. Ah? Honest Chai was shocked and almost fell to the ground. He stuttered in fear. What does it say? Yes, it says here. I'm afraid you won't be able to keep your position as the branch's vice manager. Lin Yi furrowed his brows slightly, causing Honest Chai's eyes to darken, and he almost fainted. Lin Yi smiled and continued. From the day the headquarters sends the resolution, the vice shopkeeper Honest Chai will be appointed as the new shopkeeper. Branch manager? You want me to be the branch manager? Honest Chai was completely dumbfounded, followed by ecstasy. From hell to heaven, this great sorrow and joy came too suddenly. After being the vice shopkeeper of the branch for so many years, Honest Chai didn't have any thoughts of being promoted. That was definitely deceiving himself and others. However, he also knew that with his own connections and abilities, it was no different from a lunatic's ravings. Even in his dreams, he was secretly thinking about it. This time, he was forced to step forward to testify against Wei Xiaodong and was unable to kill him with a single blow. At first, he thought that he was going to be unlucky. It would be lucky if he could keep his life, but who would have thought that the position of branch manager would fall right on top of his head? This was not just a pie falling from the sky, it was King Mountain of Gold falling from the sky. Not bad, with your abilities, you are more than qualified to be a branch manager. Don't let down Hong Zhong's trust in you in the future. Lin Yi hinted with a smile. The matter was clear. Hong Zhong personally went to the headquarters on Middle Island and had a face-to-face exchange with the higher-ups. Although he wasn't able to severely punish Wei Xiaodong, he definitely didn't return empty-handed. The branch manager position that fell on Honest Chai's head was obtained after contending with the higher-ups from the headquarters. Yes. I will do my best to live up to your and Vice Chairman Hong's appreciation and promotion. Honest Chai hurriedly swore to the heavens and couldn't contain his excitement. Did it say where I'm going? It said it's here. Linny glanced at him. Ah? But according to the Hong Chamber of Commerce's rules, isn't it a promotion at a different location? Honest Chai was momentarily stunned. At the branch manager level, no matter who it was, they had to strictly abide by the rules of a different location. This was a dead rule set by the founder, no matter how powerful one's background was. It's different. Your situation is special, so special circumstances can only be handled according to special circumstances. Only you know the situation of the Y branch best. If you leave now, the branch manager and vice manager will be new. Not to mention controlling the overall situation, they might not even be able to clear up the accounts. Who knows, they might even mess up the Y branch. Even the headquarters can't take such a huge risk. Linny smiled as he shook his head. Both branches were branch managers, but letting Honest Chai be promoted and letting him lead another branch would have a completely different effect. Honest Chai's cowardly personality was already set in stone. Once he was transferred to another branch, it would be difficult for him to control the situation. There was a high possibility that his subordinates would take over his position. A branch manager would only be a figurehead in name. But the Y branch was different. He had been operating here for so many years and knew everything like the back of his hand. Especially after the incident with Wei Xiaodong and with Lin Yi's help, the reputation he had built up during this period was enough for him to control the overall situation. That's true. The situation in the sea here is very chaotic and complicated. Adding on Wei Xiaodong's matter, it's hard for outsiders to get started without at least a year or so. Honest Chai nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. Being promoted to branch manager was already the best outcome for him. If not, he would really be so worried that he wouldn't be able to sleep. All right, bring this resolution from the headquarters back for everyone to see. Whatever happens in the Y branch in the future will be in your hands. I still have things to do here at the security agency, so I won't be going over for a while, Linny said. Yes, I promise I won't let you down. Honest Chai received the resolution from the headquarters and left in high spirits. Ever since he became a branch manager, his temperament had clearly changed. At least, he didn't look as timid as before. Although it wasn't obvious, there was already a bit of an aura around him. Linny looked at Honest Chai's back and nodded his head. He hoped that this guy could take charge and at least hold the Y branch firmly in his hands. Otherwise, Hong Zhong's efforts to fight for him would be wasted. The reason why Linny stayed at the Equal Heaven Escort Agency was because the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Conference was about to begin. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for it. Your support is my greatest motivation. Please search for Piao Tian literature. Chapter 4379. Since he had promised Qi Mingyuan and Qi Wenhan, Linny naturally would not go back on his word. Even if it was to take the opportunity to deal with Wu Baoliang, he had to help them. However, before leaving, Linny had a small gathering with Wang Xinyan and Huang Xiaotao. This was the last time they would meet. On the morning of the second day after they reluctantly parted ways, the Morning Star Academy's large ship slowly left the Crepe Arc Pier under the watchful eyes of the crowd. From now on, the three of them would go their separate ways. If Linny wanted to meet the two girls again, he would have to wait for God knows how long. However, if everything went smoothly and his strength increased quickly enough, it was still possible. After the people from the Morning Star Academy left, the bustling Crepe Arc city returned to its usual rhythm. Although it was still chaotic, at least there were not as many people in the streets and alleys. Compared to before, it was much calmer. The Crepe Arc Pier was finally reopened. In the midst of the hustle and bustle, a mighty ship set sail amidst the shouts of the crowd. On the flagship, for large black gold words fluttered in the wind, Heaven's Equal Escort Agency. The majestic ship was far from being comparable to the Morning Star Academy's large ship, but compared to the other ships at the pier, it was already considered a giant. It was not strictly a treasure ship, but it already had the basic functions of a treasure ship. It was rare to see one in the Embark pier. It was a display of the strength and foundation of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, one of the 5 major escort agencies in the South Continent. The South Continent Escort Agency's grand gathering was not held in the Embark pier, but on the other side of the South Continent, 1,000 miles away from the dark cold sea. As one of the 5 major escort agencies, the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency was a step ahead of the other escort agencies. According to the rules, each of the 5 major escort agencies had to send one person to act as a judge and form a judging team. This was the privilege that came with the status in the Jianghu. However, even if they could send a judge, it was impossible to cheat under the watchful eyes of the crowd. After all, there were people from the other 4 escort agencies restraining each other. None of them could control the event as they pleased. The existence of a judging team. At most, it could only guarantee that his family wouldn't suffer a loss. As for the rest, it was only honor. There weren't many substantial benefits. It would take at least 5 days to travel from the verdant Arc territorial waters to the cold Devil territorial waters by sea. However, with the flag of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency hanging there and a group of experts in full force, the journey was smooth. No matter how blind the pirates were, they would have to retreat at this moment. Otherwise, they would really run into the muzzle of a gun. They only cared about killing, not burying. Along the way, Lin Yi and the people of the Equal of Heaven Escort Agency arrived at the Devil Cold territorial waters. They entered a high-class inn in the city and were accommodated by Steward Song. The others didn't have anything to do for the time being, but Qi Mingyuan, the chief escort, went to work as soon as he got off the ship. Nominally, it was for each of the 5 major escort agencies to send out a judge. They could send anyone they wanted, but in reality, the judging panel was actually made up of the brains of the 5 major escort agencies. This was an unwritten rule throughout the years. Most people didn't even have the right to speak up when they went. Only their respective head escorts could attend the judging panel. Qi Mingyuan needed to be busy, but Qi Wahan, the young master, didn't have anything to do. Steward Song had made arrangements for the people in the escort agency. He only needed to wait for the event to begin. Similarly, Lin Yi had nothing to do. The two hit it off and immediately went out for a stroll. During this period of time, Lin Yi's golden core realm had been completely consolidated. After all, compared to others, it was easier for an expert of the golden core realm to achieve a perfect breakthrough. Moreover, with Lin Yi's aptitude, how could it be calculated with common sense? However, any breakthrough required an opportunity. Lin Yi had only consolidated his golden core realm in the golden core realm. If he wanted to go to the next level, he still needed some time. Therefore, he might as well go out with Qi Wahan to relax and stroll around Devil Ling City. Walking on the main street of Devil Ling City, Lin Yi found that it was obviously much more orderly than Weiwan City. Among the few seas in the South Continent that Lin Yi had been to, Weiwan City was chaotic. Jinduan City was even more chaotic, but only Devil Ling City was peaceful. Everything seemed to be normal and orderly, almost no different from the North Island. He didn't know if this place was like this, or if it was because of the South Continent Escort Agency event that someone was deliberately maintaining order. In short, walking down the street, Lin Yi didn't see any fights or trouble. If it was Weiwan City, he would have seen 4 or 5 fights or even more. Hey, there are a lot of people over there. Brother Ling, let's go over and have a look. Qi Wahan suddenly pointed to a chamber of commerce. Compared to other shops on the other streets, this chamber of commerce was obviously very popular. It was crowded up and down, and the degree of business was astonishing. The Central Chamber of Commerce? Lin Yi looked at the signboard and was stunned. The Central Chamber of Commerce gave people the feeling that it had risen rapidly overnight. It was so fast that even the top chambers of commerce on Heaven Level Island, such as 5 Elements Commerce and Hong Chamber of Commerce, were greatly impacted and threatened. He didn't expect that it would also exist in the Devil Ling Sea. Yes, I've heard people talking about it recently, but I've never come to see it. Since I happened to see it this time, I'll have to take a look, Qi Wahan said with some excitement. Okay, then let's go in and have a look. Lenny nodded. He was also very interested in this central chamber of commerce, especially the various kinds of goods sold in the secular world. If he could successfully find out the secret of this, he might be able to freely travel between Heaven Level Island and the secular world. This temptation was not small. The two of them immediately followed the crowd and walked inside. Sounds of people clicking their tongues could be heard from time to time. Looking at the various goods on the display shelves, Chihuahan was very curious, but Lenny was a little disappointed. Just like how the Central Chamber of Commerce made its name, the goods on the display shelves were some common things in the secular world. From common technological products to some practical tools, there was even food unique to the secular world. Lenny was a little absent-minded and felt that he had returned to the secular world. This was simply a department store. Of course, in the secular world, this could only be considered a very ordinary department store. It was far from those large-scale supermarkets. But even so, besides being disappointed, Lenny was also quite surprised. After all, this was Heaven Level Island. This kind of department store could be seen everywhere in the secular world, but to bring so many goods to Heaven Level Island, the meaning of this was really not small. If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for it. Your support is my greatest motivation. Please search for floating astronomy literature. Chapter 4380. Like everyone else, Chihuahan was very interested in all of these new things that the secular world had brought up. He walked left and right in high spirits. Lenny, on the other hand, followed behind him with a helpless expression. A dignified mid-stage golden elixir expert was actually shopping in the secular world's department stores on this heavenly island. Just thinking about it made one drunk. What made one even more speechless was that these common goods that could be found everywhere in the secular world could be sold for a sky-high price. Moreover, there were so many people fighting to buy them. The business was so good that it was unreasonable. Lenny made a rough estimate. Just by following Chihuahan around, the turnover had already reached the scale of tens of thousands of spiritual jades. It was almost comparable to the income of his Tiandan Pavilion in an entire day. One had to know that in Tiandan Pavilion, he was selling top-grade elixirs. In the end, they could not even compare to these secular department stores in the Central Chamber of Commerce. Such a result really made one not know whether to laugh or cry. In terms of actual value, any top-grade elixir from Tiannan Pavilion was enough to buy an entire street of secular department stores. It could only be said that the rarer something was, the greater its value. This old saying was really true. Lenny and Chihuahan chatted as they shopped. Although the latter showed great interest in these secular department stores, it was basically out of curiosity. There were very few things that could really catch his eye. As the young master of the Heavens Equal Escort Agency, Chihuahan had received elite training from a young age. He was a typical example of this. These people did not lack the heroic spirit to spend a lot of money, but at the same time, they had extraordinary self-control. If he randomly saw a new thing and was tempted to spend money like dirt, no matter how rich his family's wealth was, there would come a time when it would be squandered. If that happened, Chihuahan would not be an elite, but a pure prodigal son. Shi Mingyuan would not be at ease to hand over such a large Heavens Equal Escort Agency to him. Novelty was novelty, but these things were obviously just for fun. However, there wasn't much practical value in it. Chihuahan was just looking at it for novelty. If he really bought it, it could only mean one thing. He was out of his mind. Anyone with the slightest bit of ambition would not spend a large amount of spiritual jades on some playthings. Instead of spending money on these useless things, it would be better to buy some treasures related to cultivation, whether it was pills or weapons. Any one of them was much more practical than these secular goods. The two of them strolled around the first floor. After sighing in admiration, they turned around and went to the second floor. However, compared to the bustling first floor, the second floor was obviously much more deserted. Lenny looked around and found that the second floor did not sell the signature secular department stores of the Central Chamber of Commerce. Instead, It sold a variety of natural treasures and rare elixirs. Hee hee. Linny couldn't help but laugh. Things that are used to attract people's attention are selling so well, but the real good things are actually not being sold. That's right. It seems that this Central Chamber of Commerce is quite ambitious. Chi Wen-han was also a sensible person. He nodded in agreement. The Central Chamber of Commerce's strategy was very clear. They would use the secular department stores to create a huge gimmick and public opinion to attract everyone over. However, it was not willing to do so. Natural treasures were the main products of the large chambers of commerce, and they were also on this heavenly island. The most marketable items could be popular for a while by relying on novelty, but it could not be so popular forever. Anyone with a discerning eye could see this. Naturally, the Central Chamber of Commerce also knew this. Therefore, it had to quickly transform into a mainstream top chamber of commerce while the secular department stores were still able to attract attention, and even become a true giant. Although there weren't many people buying these natural treasures for the time being, the Central Chamber of Commerce had to make up for it. Not only did it have to make up for it, but it also had to make it better than the other chambers of commerce. Only then could it truly stand firm and prosper in the long run. What surprised Linny was that he actually saw quite a few rare natural treasures on the second floor. Even the Hong Chamber of Commerce rarely saw them. It could be seen that although the Central Chamber of Commerce had risen overnight, its foundation was incomparably deep. Ordinary chambers of commerce could not compare at all. No matter how it developed in the future, if it continued like this, it would definitely be able to occupy a place on the heavenly island. It might not be the number one, but it would definitely be among the top 3 without a doubt. This Central Chamber of Commerce is really aggressive and full of ambition. Linny smiled noncommittally. His gaze swept back and forth between the extremely rare natural treasures, but he had no intention of buying them. Although these things were rare, they were not like the Star Ink milk or the 10,000 crossing golden core fruit, which could be used by everyone. Their uses were relatively simple. If it wasn't for some special circumstances, not only would they not be used for the time being, they might not even be used in the future. Linny was only slightly interested. However, when Chi Wen-han, who was beside him, saw these things, his eyes immediately lit up. As the young master of the Heaven's Equal Escort Agency, his experience was not something that an ordinary person could compare to. Of course, he could tell what the truly good things were. "Waiter, bring this sky snow vine down for me to take a look." Chi Wen-han immediately extended his hand and beckoned a waiter over. He pointed at one of the items with great enthusiasm. He would not buy the common goods on the first floor, but if this was a truly good item, he would not hesitate to spend more spirit jades. Linny smiled and strolled around by himself. He had originally wanted to wait for Chi Wen-han, but seeing that he was chatting enthusiastically with the waiter, he did not disturb him. He turned around and walked to the 3rd floor. Compared to the bustling first floor, there were already very few people on the 2nd floor. However, the 3rd floor was practically empty. Linny was a little surprised as he sized up the place. He realized that there were no display racks, but rather luxurious and elegant private rooms. It seemed like a place for people to chat and rest. Those clients who did large business should be discussing with the Central Chamber of Commerce's manager in this place. However, why was there not a single person here? Wasn't business booming downstairs? One could not blame Linny for guessing this way. Any normal person would have the same thought. After all, everything the Chamber of Commerce did was to trade with people. However, what Linny did not expect was that this Central Chamber of Commerce was a little different from the other large chambers of commerce that he had seen before. Although the 2nd floor was deserted, there were at least some customers. However, there was not a single customer on the 3rd floor. There was only one reason for this. This place was not open to the public. No one was allowed to enter without permission. Normally, the entrance to the staircase was guarded. Moreover, those who frequented the Central Chamber of Commerce all knew this rule. Normally, they would not gather here, let alone go up to the 3rd floor without permission. However, in the past few days, Because the South Continent Escort Agency Grand Assembly was about to be held here, it had attracted a large number of outsiders. As a result, the already bustling Central Chamber of Commerce's business became even more lively. Floating astronomy. Chapter 4381. Just like what Lin Yi had just seen, there were too many guests on the first floor. Usually, there were only a few waiters who couldn't handle it, so they had no choice but to transfer all the staff over. Even the second floor only had one waiter left. Qi Wenhan, on the other hand, had called him over for questioning. That was why Lin Yi was able to get to the third floor without any obstructions. Seeing that there was no one around, although Lin Yi felt a little surprised, he didn't intend to stay any longer. He was about to turn around and go downstairs when his ears suddenly twitched. There was actually someone talking in a private room not far away. Lin Yi was suddenly shocked. He had just used his divine sense to scan the third floor and didn't sense anyone's presence. Even if he didn't look particularly carefully, just a rough scan, it must be a rare expert to be able to hide from his divine sense. What kind of person would be so secretive as to intentionally conceal their aura while conversing in a private room? Lin Yi couldn't help but be a little curious, but that was all. He didn't want to disturb other people's conversation. However, a sentence from this private room suddenly made him stop. Recently, these miscellaneous items are in high demand. We have to find a way to let the headquarters send more from the secular world. Otherwise, we may run out of supplies in 2 days. Yes, the inventory was already running low yesterday. If we don't get them to send the goods quickly, we will definitely run out of supplies here. That will be troublesome. I'll think of a way to urge them again. Fortunately, the teleportation is near us, so our branch will be the first to choose. Otherwise, even if it's teleported here, it won't be our turn. Maybe we won't even get the leftovers. That's right, the strategy of the headquarters is really brilliant. They set off a secular craze in the 5 Heaven Stage Islands, making these items from the secular world a trend on the Heaven Stage Islands, becoming a symbol of identity and status. Forcing everyone to compete to buy them, and if they don't buy, they will lose face and can't raise their heads in front of their friends. Even if we include the teleportation channel, the cost of each item is at most a few dozen spiritual jades, but it can be sold for a sky-high price of thousands or even tens of thousands. Is there any business more profitable than this in the world? In the secular world, this is called a monopoly. Who asked us to be the only ones who have these things? No matter how high the price is. They can only obediently hand over their spiritual jades, ha ha ha. Lin Yi's heart shook, and he carefully walked over. Ever since the Central Chamber of Commerce had appeared, he had always been curious about it. He was especially curious about how it could bring items from the secular world to Heavenly Fate Island. Based on their words, they should be people from the Central Chamber of Commerce. Perhaps he would be able to learn some clues. He held his breath and focused. Lin Yi did his best to restrain his aura, trying his best to blend in with his surroundings. Concealment and concealment were the most important lessons for an assassin. Lin Yi had always been an expert in this field. Not to mention experts of the same level, even experts who were an entire realm higher than him would find it difficult to detect. However, before Lin Yi could get close, the 2 people in the private room suddenly quieted down. They stopped talking halfway. Lin Yi suddenly shivered. Oh no! This was not a place to stay for long. There was no time to react, and no time to think about anything else. Lin Yi made a prompt decision, and quickly put on the 1,000 silk mask, changing his face, and then turned to leave. Unfortunately, Lin Yi's movements were too slow. 2 figures appeared and disappeared mysteriously, blocking his path of retreat. Lin Yi was shocked. What level of experts were these 2? He had been so careful and restrained, but he was still easily caught by them. The 2 men who appeared in front of him, one dressed in black and masked, and the other had a sinister appearance. The similarity was that both of their auras were unfathomable. Lin Yi's golden finger could not detect them at all. In other words, they were at least nascent soul experts. However, Lin Yi had seen many nascent soul experts. Unless it was in existence like the will of heaven, others did not give him much pressure. However, these two people in front of him made even the true qi in his body unconsciously move. This was something he had never seen before. It showed that these two people were definitely not ordinary. Who are you? How dare you break into the central forbidden area? Ma Tianlang, take him down! The man in black ordered without saying anything. The sinister man named Ma Tianlang, who was standing next to him, had a murderous look in his eyes, and immediately exploded. When Ma Tianlang made his move, Lin Yi's heart suddenly became turbulent. Before, he already felt that these two people were not ordinary. After the other party made his move, he finally saw their strength clearly. They were actually super experts of the profound ascending stage. Even in the Morning Star Academy of the East Continent, profound ascending stage experts were also the existence of the three giants. What kind of god was this Central Chamber of Commerce? How could they meet such monsters so casually? More importantly, this Ma Tianlang seemed to be just a subordinate of the man in black. With Lin Yi's current strength in the middle gold core stage, if the opponent was only a nascent soul expert, even if it was two latent nascent soul experts, as long as he used his trump card, he still had a chance to fight. Not to mention killing the two of them, but at least taking advantage of the chaos to escape, this was not a big problem. But now, the opponent was a super expert of the profound ascending stage who was 2 realms higher than him. How could he deal with this? No matter how heaven-defying Lin Yi was, it was impossible for him to fight against such a ridiculously strong profound ascending stage expert with a mere middle gold core stage cultivation. Otherwise, the only result was that Lin Yi would not even have time to react and would be instantly defeated on the spot. Misunderstanding! Misunderstanding! I'm just a guess! Lin Yi quickly shouted. It was definitely impossible to make a move. He could only use this to make the other party slightly relax his vigilance and act according to the situation. Guessed? Ma Tianlang looked up and down at Lin Yi, seeing that he was indeed unfamiliar, and seeing that there was no staff on duty on the 3rd floor, he believed a little in his heart, but he still sneered. Misunderstanding my ass! Since you broke into this place, then don't even think about leaving! After that, Ma Tianlang's figure floated, and in the blink of an eye, he appeared behind Lin Yi, and grabbed Lin Yi's right shoulder with one hand. Feeling the murderous aura in the other party's hand, even Lin Yi couldn't help but break into a cold sweat. The other party didn't use much force, and the true qi in his body was already somewhat stagnant. If he couldn't mobilize his true qi, he would be no different from an ordinary person. He could only be slaughtered by others. The difference in strength between the two was too great, and he really had no power to resist. However, Lin Yi was still a little glad in his heart. Fortunately, he said these words, and the other party only controlled him and didn't directly kill him. Otherwise, he would have become a corpse by now. Chapter 4382. Throw him into the dungeon. The man in black said emotionlessly, then turned around and left. Ma Tianlang brought Lin Yi out of the Central Chamber of Commerce through the back door. Lin Yi looked around quietly, ready to find a chance to create chaos and escape. However, the man in black did not give him a chance. He grabbed his right shoulder and jumped up. His speed was so fast that not even his shadow could be seen. The passers-by on the street did not seem to notice their existence. Lin Yi's heart sank. It was difficult to mobilize the genuine qi in his body. Not to mention using martial arts, he could not even use genuine qi to protect his body. Moreover, his right shoulder was being held tightly by the man in black. In this situation, if he moved even a little, his right shoulder would probably be crushed into powder, let alone escape. Lin Yi had no choice but to give up the idea of resisting. He let Ma Tianlang hold his right shoulder and obediently let him carry him away. After leaving the Chamber of Commerce, Ma Tianlang suddenly sped up. Lin Yi only felt that his vision was blurred, and a moment later, he did not know which corner of Mo Ling City he was in. Ma Tianlang brought Lin Yi to a civilian house. It looked no different from the other buildings around it. After entering it, there seemed to be no difference. However, after passing through a few secret doors, the scene was very different. In front of him was a long, dark tunnel. No one knew where it led to. Ma Tianlang then carried Lin Yi for a while. After an unknown period of time, Ma Tianlang finally stopped. Lin Yi looked around carefully. There was an entrance in front of him. It seemed to be the dungeon that the man in black mentioned before. There were 2 guards at the entrance. His golden finger could not see through their realms, so they were obviously powerful people. Moreover, the aura they exuded was far stronger than that of an ordinary original infant stage master. Seeing this, Lin Yi could not help but feel a chill in his heart. So far, none of the people he had come into contact with were easy to deal with. No matter how he looked at it, this central chamber of commerce could not be as simple as a chamber of commerce, right? Just who was behind it? Ma Tianlang nodded to the 2 guards, raised his leg and kicked Lin Yi into the dungeon. Then he walked away. No candlelight, no fluorite. The dungeon was pitch black, so dark that one couldn't even see their fingers if they stretched out their hands. They couldn't even sense the situation in their surroundings, only knowing that it was eerie and creepy. An ordinary person would probably be scared half to death. However, Lin Yi was fine. Ma Tianlang didn't grab his right shoulder, and the genuine qi in his body was restored. No matter what happened, he would always have the strength to protect himself. Moreover, the surrounding environment. It was clearly visible to his divine sense. The area of this dungeon was not small. At first glance, it looked like a small square. The surrounding walls were faintly emitting the aura of a protective formation. It was extremely hard, and if one wanted to break through it with force, it would be impossible. To ordinary people, it was just wishful thinking. At the very least, ordinary nascent soul experts would not be able to shake it. Unless it was a profound ascending stage powerhouse, or a heaven-defying existence like the will of heaven who was at the peak of the nascent soul stage, but could easily kill a profound ascending stage powerhouse. "Kid, are you new here? What did you do?" At this time, a rude voice suddenly sounded in the darkness. Lin Yi turned his head towards the voice. The person who spoke was a man with a face full of scars. His appearance was very fierce and scary, and his whole body exuded a strong, violent aura. This guy was definitely not to be trifled with. Other than the man with the scar, there were quite a number of people locked up in the dungeon as well, all of them staring at Lin Yi. Some were eager to try, some were gloating, and some were watching coldly. In short, not a single one of them was friendly. After a careful glance, his divine sense probed these people one by one. Lin Yi was shocked. "What are you waiting for? Do you have any good things in your hands? Take them out and share them with me, otherwise don't blame me for being rude." The scar-faced man thought that Lin Yi was scared by him, so he sneered complacently. At the same time, the scar-faced man also released his whole body's aura. Impressively, he was at the middle stage of the nascent soul stage. The other people in the dungeon all showed a look of fear. It could be seen that their strength was not as high as his. If there was no accident, they were also oppressed by him before, which was why they were so afraid. It was a pity. The scar-faced man was really thinking too highly of himself. Although in the outside world, a middle-stage nascent soul stage expert was high enough to be feared, and even in this dungeon, it was not enough to enter Lin Yi's eyes. He was the strongest middle-stage golden core stage expert who had a perfect breakthrough, and he had all kinds of trump cards, especially the super killer weapon that was the mixture of Dan fire and Qi. Lin Yi had never been in existence that could be judged by common sense. Not to mention a golden core stage expert of the same level, even an early-stage nascent soul stage expert was nothing in front of him. As for a middle-stage nascent soul stage expert, it would only take a little more effort. The reason why Lin Yi was so shocked just now was not because of this scar-faced man, but because he actually found a familiar person he had been looking for recently, Lu Bianren. Never in his wildest dreams would Lin Yi have imagined that Lu Bianren would be locked up in this dungeon. No wonder there had been no news of him all this time. No wonder the Chitian escort agency's network hadn't been able to get a response at all. Lu Bianren had been locked up in this dungeon all year round. It would be a miracle if someone from the outside could find him. At the same time that Lin Yi found Lu Bianren was also looking at Lin Yi, but he did not know him. After all, Lin Yi was now wearing the thousand silk mask, and it was a completely unfamiliar face of a rude man. Compared to the other people who were gloating, there was no malice in Lu Bianren's eyes, and there was even a trace of pity. Every new person who came in would be bullied by this scar-faced man, and he was no exception. The scar-faced man was a master at the middle stage of the Yuanying realm, while Lu Bianren was only at the middle stage of the Gold Core realm. There was a gap of a whole realm, and he was not like Lin Yi, who could easily fight against opponents at a higher realm. In front of the scar-faced man, he could not even defend himself, let alone help a stranger. The only thing he could do was to sympathize with him. If he dared to jump out and fight openly, it was tantamount to seeking his own death. After all, this was a dungeon, and the guards outside basically did not care about what happened inside. If they really fought, he would die in vain. Seeing that Lin Yi still did not respond, the scar-faced man frowned and walked in front of Lin Yi in 2 steps. He shouted sternly, "I'm talking to you, did you hear me? Are you talking to me?" Only then did Lin Yi move his eyes away from Lu Bianren. He did not acknowledge him in public, but turned to look at the scar-faced man and asked calmly, "Nonsense, you are the only newcomer here. If I don't talk to you, do you think I'm talking to air? Are you F***king sick in the head?" The scar-faced man cursed and walked over. "If you like this work, you are welcome to vote for it. Your support is my greatest motivation. Please search for Piaotian literature." Chapter 4383. Arriving in front of Lin Yi, he spread out his hands and said, "Kid, since you're here, then you have to follow the rules here. Take out all the good stuff you have on you. I'll be frank with you first. If I'm not careful, I might accidentally kill someone. It's not good for anyone. Don't force me. Sorry, I don't have anything on me." Lin Yi couldn't help but smile. Then, he looked at him disdainfully and said, "Even if I do, who do you think you are? Oh? You're being arrogant?" The man with the scar didn't get angry. Instead, he laughed. The scar on his face became even more ferocious. He got closer and closer and sneered. "You're asking for it. Kid, you asked for it. Don't blame me for being merciless." As he finished speaking, the man with the scar suddenly reached out his hand to grab Lin Yi. He was about to search him. Everyone else in the dungeon was watching coldly. Many of them were even gloating. When they were first caught, they also had the same unfortunate experience. Now that they saw others following in their footsteps, not only did they not share the same hatred, but they also felt that it was reasonable. If Lin Yi wasn't bullied by the man with the scar, they would feel that it was unfair. From the beginning to the end, no one was optimistic about Lin Yi. The man with the scar was a master in the middle stage of the original level. This newcomer, although he hadn't shown his strength, didn't look like he was a match for the man with the scar. This wasn't purely looking down on Lin Yi. Although judging a book by its cover is often derogatory, in fact, most of the time, it is still reasonable. Bai Ho WW is said to be born from the heart. In the world of cultivation, if a person practiced a profound martial art, his appearance and temperament would naturally change. Someone like Lin Yi, who looked like a boorish man at the moment, was definitely the kind of person who didn't practice well. His strength was generally not that strong. Even Lu Bianren didn't think that Lin Yi would win. A wise man knows when to fight when the odds are against him. Since he was not strong enough, it was better to be smart and accumulate his strength first. At this time, there was only one word to describe him: unwise. However, the following scene caused everyone's jaws to drop. Even Lu Bianren could not recover from his shock for a long time. Without any warning, Lin Yi suddenly threw a frenzy 8 trigrams palm at the face of the man with the horizontal scar. Although the man with the horizontal scar had expected this guy to be a thorn in his side and had been guarding against him, when the time came, the man with the horizontal scar did not dare to attack. However, he found that he had no time to react at all. Under this mad fire 8 trigrams palm, a dignified master in the middle stage of the yawning stage was slapped 3 times in place, and his whole person was stunned. Immediately after, without waiting for the man with the scar to recover, Lin Yi raised his leg and performed another flaming 1,000 kicks, hitting the man with the scar in the middle of his back. Boom! Accompanied by a loud noise, the man with the horizontal scar was sprawled on the ground. It was imprinted firmly on the wall, causing the entire dungeon to tremble violently. Fortunately, it was reinforced by the defense formation. If not, it would have been impossible. Perhaps the entire dungeon would collapse from the tremors. The whole place was dead silent. Everyone's mouths were wide open, and they couldn't say a word for a long time. There was only the sound of people inhaling cold air. It was an expression of everyone's current mood. They had not been locked in this dungeon for a day or two. It had been at least a few months, and they had long gotten used to the bullying of the man with the horizontal scar. Strength was supreme, and the fist was king. The man with the horizontal scar was the strongest. Naturally, he had the final say here, and no one could resist. Of course, there were exceptions in the past. There were always hot-blooded people who didn't want to obey like this, but the end result was the same. No matter who dared to resist, they were eventually beaten half to death by the man with the horizontal scar, and from then on, they didn't even dare to let out a fart. The 2 guards outside did not care about any of this at all, and it further fueled the man with the horizontal scar's arrogance. They never thought that such a scene would happen today. The man with the horizontal scar, this time, kicked an iron plate, and kicked himself until he bled. In an instant, everyone's fear of the man with the horizontal scar was completely transferred to Lin Yi. As for the originally arrogant man with the horizontal scar, after he forcefully dug himself out from the wall, he fell to the ground and spat out blood. Everyone looked at him with the same expression, and they were all very satisfied. After acting like a tyrant in the dungeon for so long, you deserve to have this day with the scar on your face. God really has eyes. You are also an original level cultivator? After spitting out a mouthful of blood, the man with the horizontal scar finally recovered a little. He raised his head and looked at Lin Yi in disbelief. He was obviously just a boorish man. How could he be such an expert? Since when were original level cultivators so low class? Humph! Lin Yi looked at him disdainfully and coldly snorted. He neither admitted nor denied it. In the eyes of the others, the question of the man with the scar was simply nonsense. He, a master in the middle stage of the nascent soul stage, was almost crippled in one move. If this ruthless man was not a master in the nascent soul stage, could he be a master in the gold core stage? It was obvious that this new master was not only an original level cultivator, he was at least an expert above the middle stage original level. To deal with a scar-faced man like him, he was definitely more than enough. You! The man with the horizontal scar originally wanted to say a few harsh words to maintain the situation. In the end, when Lin Yi casually glanced at him, he immediately shrank his neck back. The imposing manner that he had summoned with great difficulty instantly dissipated. He was obviously scared to death, but he still wanted to show off. It was really funny to look at him. What about me? The corner of Lin Yi's mouth hung a faint smile. I surrender, I won't provoke you. However, don't be too delusional. If you think you can control me from now on, then you are very wrong. The man with the horizontal scar stood up shakily and pretended to be tough. I was just caught off guard just now. No matter what, I am still a middle-stage original level cultivator. If we really fight to the death, both sides will suffer. Therefore, I will take a step back. I won't provoke you, and you won't provoke me either. We will mind our own business. Are you stupid? Lin Yi looked at him as if he was looking at an idiot. He suddenly waved his hand and suddenly released the chi bomb. This was something that he had secretly condensed at this moment. From the moment the man took the initiative to provoke him, Lin Yi did not plan to let this guy go easily. Since this guy took the initiative to come to him, he would at least cripple him if not kill him. Boom! There was another loud sound, and the man with the horizontal scar suddenly screamed in pain. He was once again embedded into the wall, and there was no movement for a long time. Everyone looked at each other. They thought that the man with the horizontal scar was killed just like that. They did not expect that after a while, the man with the horizontal scar suddenly cried out in pain. Trembling, he once again dug himself out of the wall. There was blood all over his head. His head had exploded into a bloody gourd. Looking at the miserable appearance of the man with the horizontal scar, even the people who had been bullied by him could not help but feel a trace of sympathy. Chapter 4384. Sure enough, evil people need to be tortured by evil people. The scar-faced man, who had always been domineering, was simply a lamb waiting to be slaughtered in front of this new fierce god. He had no power to resist and was simply being trampled on. He'd already suffered quite a bit of injury, and now that he'd been blasted by the chi bomb, he couldn't even stand up. His eyes were trembling as he looked at Lin Yi, and he didn't dare try to be brave anymore. Otherwise, he'd really have to report to the Yellow Springs Road if this demon did something like that again. It's easy for me to kill you, so if you want to keep your life, don't be an eyesore in front of me, Lin Yi said in a light tone. There was no exaggeration in these words. The true chi bomb just now was condensed too short. Secondly, it was not mixed with a fire bomb. Otherwise, even if he was a master in the middle stage of the Yuanying stage, no matter how strong the vitality of the scar-faced man was, he would still be blown into pieces. The scar-faced man heard the words and seemed to want to talk back. However, when he was glanced at by Lin Yi, he immediately shrunk back in embarrassment and did not dare to say a word. He had always thought of himself as a ruthless person. He was domineering outside, and he was still the same in the dungeon. He had always been a prison tyrant. He was the only one who bullied others, and no one had ever dared to defy him. Even those who did not have eyes would become obedient after being beaten up by him. He did not expect that today there would be someone even more fierce. Not only was the person stronger than him, the key was that he was ruthless and decisive. The scar-faced man could feel that this person was really a person who killed without blinking an eye. Perhaps this person would not kill innocent people like him, but this kind of person was even more terrifying. He really could not afford to provoke him. Suddenly, he kicked such a big iron plate. The good days of being domineering had come to an end. Moreover, he was beaten into such a miserable state. The scar-faced man was very depressed. A wise man did not fight when the odds were against him. In the face of a fierce god like Lin Yi, even an evil person like him was trembling in panic. If it was not for the fact that he could not put down his face in front of so many people, he would have already knelt there and admitted defeat. I want to ask you a few questions, and I hope you can tell me the truth. How did you get locked up here, and how long have you been locked up here? Lin Yi pointed at the man with the horizontal scar and ordered. Start with you, one by one. Everyone's attention was once again focused on him. The man with the horizontal scar scowled miserably, not daring to defy Lin Yi's order. He had no choice but to support himself miserably while hanging his head and saying, Oh no, I'm Sun Hengbiao. I'm a pirate near the dark cold sea region. Pirate? Lin Yi looked at him and asked, Then how did you get in? Could it be that the Central Chamber of Commerce is so responsible that they would send people to purge you pirates? In the seas of the South Continent, pirates of all kinds could be seen everywhere. Because there was no unified force to arrest them, they could swagger through the streets. Even if they were to talk about their no-cost business in the downtown area of the city, it didn't matter. Everyone was already used to it, as long as they didn't snatch it from them. He wouldn't meddle in other people's business. That's not it. Oh no, I saw that this Central Chamber of Commerce was very profitable, so I wanted to rob their ship. I wanted to make a fortune, but I didn't expect that there were so many masters on the ship, and two mysterious ascending stage powerhouses came up. They beat me half to death and threw me here, Sun Hengbiao said with an embarrassed look. It was the first time the other people in the dungeon heard him talk about this, and they all had weird expressions on their faces. They looked at this guy as if they were looking at an idiot. The Central Chamber of Commerce was aggressive, and normal people would be too late to avoid it. This man with the horizontal scar actually dared to go to their door and rob their goods. He was lucky to not be beaten to death. Sun Hengbiao himself wore a hapless expression. In the dark cold sea region, the strength of a mid-stage nascent soul cultivator was definitely not weak. Together with a group of extremely vicious pirate subordinates, wherever he went, he would always be terror-stricken and invincible. Even if the other party also had a nascent soul stage powerhouse on their ship, they were not willing to fight him to the death. After all, it was not worth risking your life for a few spirit jades with such vicious pirates. However, who the hell would have thought that there would be a mysterious ascending stage powerhouse on the ship of the Central Chamber of Commerce? Since when were mysterious ascending stage powerhouses so worthless? He, Sun Hengbiao, actually went to rob a mysterious ascending stage powerhouse. If this wasn't bad luck, then what was? That situation was exactly the same as before. He thought that the other party was a soft persimmon that he could do anything he wanted, but before he could even be arrogant, he was beaten half to death with one slap. Everyone looked at Sun Hengbiao and couldn't help but laugh. This guy was indeed a blind idiot. He didn't learn from his previous encounter with a mysterious ascending stage powerhouse, and now he encountered this demon. He really deserved to be unlucky. How long have you been locked up? Lin Yi continued to ask. This? Sun Hengbiao frowned and thought for a moment before replying in full detail. It's been about 10 months. Among them, I'm the one who's been here the longest. Lin Yi heard this and looked at the others. Everyone nodded. Indeed, when they came in, Sun Hengbiao was already acting like a tyrant. So, you're the first to be caught? Lin Yi asked. No, that's not it. A lot of people came in earlier than me, but they were all taken out. Sun Hengbiao shook his head honestly. Pirate leaders like him were vicious, but if they really met a tough guy like Lin Yi, they would be more obedient than anyone else, because they believed more than anyone else in the rules of Jianghu where the strong ruled. Taken out? What do you mean, let go? Lin Yi couldn't help but feel a little strange. The Central Chamber of Commerce was so secretive that they even captured guests like him, who had not done anything bad, without saying a word. They shouldn't be so kind as to easily let these people go unharmed, right? Many other people in the dungeon also pricked up their ears when they heard this. Sun Hengbiao had always bullied them, and never mentioned anything about this. Even those who had been locked up for a few months did not know much about these things. Most of them were as clueless as Lin Yi, and confused. It was rare for Sun Hengbiao to be forced to speak by this demon. This matter concerned everyone's future, so everyone naturally had to listen carefully. Chapter 4385. Human Experimentation? Lin Yi's eyes lit up. Of course, the people on Sky Class Island didn't understand this term, but everyone in the common world knew about it. The Fire Wolf gang that Zhang Wen was in specialized in this. Since the appearance of the common world's department stores, Lin Yi already felt that this Central Chamber of Commerce was inextricably linked to the common world. He didn't expect it to be so. Now, there was a human experimentation. More and more evidence showed that this Central Chamber of Commerce was most likely developed from the common world. However, back then, the common world's top forces gathered together, and with so many people, they barely managed to activate the teleportation circle and send them to Sky Class Island. Just what kind of power was behind this Central Chamber of Commerce? Not only did they successfully extend their tentacles to the Heavenly Stage Islands, but they also easily swept through the 5 Heavenly Stage Islands. It could be said that they were coming aggressively, showing an unstoppable state of madness. The key was that there were even profound ascending stage masters in charge, and it seemed that there were more than 1 or 2 of them. Even Lin Yi didn't dare to think too deeply about this power. It was too shocking. Yes, human experimentation. Anyway, after those people were taken out, none of them came back. I don't know if they died or something, but I don't think it's anything good. Plus, with my nascent soul mid-stage strength, no one here is stronger than me. So every time they ask for someone, I'll let someone else take the blame. I won't go, Sun Hengbiao said proudly. Although he didn't have good eyesight, he was a pirate leader in the magic cold sea. He wasn't an idiot. Even if he didn't understand human experimentation, he could roughly tell if it was good or bad. Predicting good or bad luck sounded mysterious, but many masters who reached a certain level actually had this ability. It was just that the accuracy was different. Let others go. You call the shots in this dungeon. Those guards outside, those profound ascending stage masters listen to you? Linny sneered. In front of a profound ascending stage master, you're nothing. Hearing that, the others sneered and mocked him. Sun Hengbiao's face instantly turned red. He was used to being arrogant, trying to flatter himself for no reason. Even though he had suffered a lot because of it, he couldn't change his character. With Sun Hengbiao's nascent soul mid-stage strength, he could act arrogantly in front of these people, but to the profound ascending stage masters outside, they were ants that could be easily crushed with one foot. They were ants that could be easily crushed to death with one foot. If they really wanted to take people out for human experiments, would they even discuss it with Sun Hengbiao? If Sun Hengbiao really had such a big face, why would he be locked up in this dungeon? Bullshit. That? Sun Hengbiao glared at everyone, but he didn't dare show his temper in front of Lin Yi. He scratched his head awkwardly and said, They didn't want to talk to me at first, but after a while, I realized that they weren't interested in nascent soul masters. He took the others away one by one, but he didn't care about me at all. Look, there's another nascent soul cultivator over there. It's been a long time, and he hasn't been taken away. Following Sun Hengbiao's finger, in the corner of the dungeon, Lin Yi saw an ordinary-looking man in a green robe. He was meditating where he was. Yes, that's right. The man in green saw Lin Yi's gaze, and nodded quickly. That was because he was quite strong. Sun Hengbiao never provoked him, so he naturally wouldn't provoke Sun Hengbiao. But this new fiend could beat Sun Hengbiao into such a miserable state. It was obvious that he was not to be trifled with. Facing Lin Yi's question, of course, he didn't dare to neglect it. Oh? That's strange. Lin Yi couldn't help but frown. He had heard a little about human experimentation. It was actually like doing a scientific experiment. No matter what the purpose was, in order to find the most effective method, a large number of human samples would be taken. And the human samples had to be involved at all levels. It didn't make sense that nascent soul stage masters were excluded. Unless the Central Chamber of Commerce's human experimentation research didn't include nascent soul stage masters, but specifically targeted golden core stage masters. Hearing Sun Hengbiao's words, everyone else in the dungeon started to panic. Apart from the green-clothed man in the nascent soul realm, they were all experts in the gold core realm. Didn't that mean that they would be dragged out to do some human experiments one day? Everyone knew that it was definitely not something good. Otherwise, the Central Chamber of Commerce wouldn't have captured them and locked them up here. Maybe after the human experimentation, they wouldn't even have a whole corpse left. Everyone here was like pigs waiting to be slaughtered. I've been here for a long time, and I've never caused trouble for them. I've even made the people in the dungeon obedient, so they turn a blind eye to me, Sun Hengbiao said a little proudly. Now that he was trapped in the dungeon and couldn't see the light of day, it naturally couldn't compare to the scenery outside. But to be able to find a sense of superiority from these people was also a rare psychological comfort. Lin Yi, on the other hand, didn't find the word strange. In order to manage a prison full of practitioners, they needed a prison tyrant to help them suppress the prisoners, other than strict monitoring. An existence like Sun Hengbiao wasn't a bad thing for the guards outside. In fact, they were more than happy to see it happen. So, the other Golden Core stage masters have all been taken away? Lin Yi asked thoughtfully. Yes. Anyway, those who came earlier than me have all been taken away. Those who came later than me have also been taken away. Sun Hengbiao nodded. His gaze swept across the other people in the dungeon, and he threatened them maliciously. These people, it's only a matter of time. He. Everyone couldn't help but shrink their necks in fear. Even Lu Bianren, who was always calm, was obviously flustered. No matter how strong a master was, he still couldn't get rid of the fear of the unknown. However, as a Golden Core stage master, Lin Yi wasn't too worried at the moment. First, he knew what human experimentation was. Second, compared to the others here, he was stronger. Naturally, he was more confident that he could deal with all kinds of threats. Apart from this, what else do you know? Lin Yi continued to ask. Sun Hengbiao was the one who had been here the longest, so he must know the most. Chapter 4386. Really? Lin Yi frowned and asked. Unspecified currency. Seeing that Lin Yi didn't seem to believe him, he quickly raised his hand and swore. It's true, I swear to the heavens, I really don't know. Although those profound ascension practitioners turned a blind eye to me, they never talked to me, and I didn't dare to ask. One wrong question might kill me. Okay, next. Lin Yi did not continue to make things difficult for Sun Hengbiao, and immediately turned to the people next to him. Why were they caught? How long were they locked up here? And asked them one by one. Although everyone was a little puzzled as to why Lin Yi did this, but with Sun Hengbiao's experience there, they would not dare to provoke such a cruel master. Moreover, it was just asking 2 questions. It was not a big deal, and they were not like Sun Hengbiao who would rob treasures at every turn. Naturally, they were happy to cooperate. Everyone asked one by one, and everyone had different reasons. Some had a conflict with the Central Chamber of Commerce because they were buying things, some had a drink and went to the Central Chamber of Commerce to cause trouble, and some owed the Central Chamber of Commerce spiritual jades. There were all kinds of strange reasons, no matter what they could think of, no matter what kind of messy reasons. Some even made people not know whether to laugh or cry. But all of them had one thing in common, and that was that they were all related to the Central Chamber of Commerce. After asking around, it was finally Lu Bianren's turn. Lin Yi deliberately asked them one by one. In addition to wanting to understand as much as possible, he actually wanted to ask Lu Bianren the most, but he did not want to expose his identity, so he could not name him alone, so he could only use this method to deceive people. The two faced each other at close range. Lu Bianren felt that Lin Yi looked familiar, as if he had seen him before. Of course, he had never seen this rough and boorish face before, but Lin Yi's temperament was really familiar, and a little strange. The strange thing was, Lin Yi's temperament really did not match his rough and boorish appearance. Most people would not feel it if they did not look carefully, but now that they felt it at such a close distance, they would feel out of place. In the past, when Lu Bianren was in the welcoming pavilion, because his authority was taken away, he had nothing to do. Therefore, he had been studying all kinds of ancient books, especially the theory of face-to-face physiognomy. As the saying goes, one's appearance is born from one's heart. Lin Yi's current rough and boorish appearance was completely incompatible with his temperament. For Lu Bianren, who was proficient in physiognomy, this was simply subverting common sense. It was not scientific at all. However, Lu Bianren did not know that this fiend was Lin Yi. He was just as respectful as everyone else, not daring to be neglectful. I originally went to the Central Chamber of Commerce to gather information, but I don't know why or how I offended them, but I was inexplicably captured. Even now, I still haven't figured out the whole story. Lu Bianren smiled bitterly. Everyone was in disbelief, regardless of the reason, whether it was a big or small matter. When they were arrested, they had at least offended the Central Chamber of Commerce. This Lu Bianren was naturally the same. How could he be arrested just for gathering information? These words were not entirely true. He must be hiding something. This was everyone's first reaction. However, Lu Bianren was telling the truth. This was the truth. Up until now, he was still confused and had no idea what was going on. Lin Yi was also a little surprised, but he did not think that Lu Bianren was lying. Because Lu Bianren had always been open and aboveboard, and he was an upright person. He would not deliberately fabricate and deceive for this kind of thing. What information did you go to gather? Lin Yi continued to ask without batting an eyelid. This? Can I not say? Lu Bianren was a little embarrassed. Everyone was suddenly in an uproar, and Sun Hengbiao looked like he was looking at a dead man. This fiend in front of him could even beat a ruthless person like him half to death. You are just a golden core expert, and you dare to put on airs in front of him? It's just a question that doesn't matter. It's not like he will cut your flesh. Is it necessary to provoke such a ruthless person for such a small matter? Even if there is something unspeakable in it, can't you just make up a lie? Why be so direct? Isn't this courting death? However, this was Lu Bianren's style of doing things. If he could say it, he would say it. If he didn't want to say it, he would be straightforward. It was indeed easy to make up a lie, but if he would do that, then he would not be Lu Bianren. Lu Bianren did not have any friendship with these people in the dungeon. Everyone was gloating, waiting for the fiend, Lin Yi, to flip out and watch the show. However, Lin Yi's reaction was far beyond their expectations. All right, then forget it. Lin Yi nodded calmly, and then moved on to the next person. Such a calm reaction made everyone wonder if they were blind, especially Sun Hengbiao, who almost cursed out loud on the spot. When he was dealing with him just now, this demon god was ruthless. There was no way he was going to be so easy to negotiate. Even Lu Bianren himself felt a little surprised. He was prepared to receive the other party's anger, but who would have thought that it would really be so easy? With just a few words, it was over. If it were anyone else, this person in front of him would probably have given them a kick. Lu Bianren could not help but wonder if this strange sense of familiarity was really not an illusion. Had he really dealt with this person before? Everyone looked at each other, but did not dare to make a sound. They could only watch as Lin Yi continued to ask questions with a belly full of questions. Finally, after asking everyone in the dungeon, Lin Yi calmly found a place to sit cross-legged. Coincidentally, it was right next to Lu Bianren. This time, even if everyone did not know what was going on, they began to understand. This fiend, who was even more ruthless than Sun Hengbiao, was obviously treating Lu Bianren differently. In this dungeon, Lu Bianren had always been quiet, and had never done anything out of line. In everyone's eyes, he had always been the kind of person who was easy to bully. But now, they had to think about it a little more in the future. Lu Bianren was indeed easy to bully, but if he made the fiend next to him unhappy, then he would not be able to find his grave even if he cried. In this way, not only was everyone surprised and suspicious, even Lu Bianren himself was wondering if he had dealt with this person before. He did not look familiar, but his temperament was indeed very familiar. You're tuning into the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.